My name is Dolores Trujillo, and I have been appointed by Governor Newsom to serve in the direct care provider role. I am also the current president of the board. Vice President Mary Fagan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Fagan. I'm the Vice President of the board. I was appointed by Governor Newsom in the Nursing Services Administration role.
Jovita Dominguez.
Good morning. My name is Jovita Dominguez, appointed by Governor Newsom. I chair the Education and Licensing.
Patricia Nguyen.
Hi, good morning. Tricia Nguyen. I was appointed by Governor Newsom in the public member role.
David Lawler.
Good morning. My name is David Lawler. I was also appointed by Governor Newsom in the public member role.
Vicki Granowitz.
Vicki Granowitz, public member appointed by President Pro Tempore Tony Atkins.
Allison Cormack.
Good morning, Allison Cormack, appointed by the former Speaker of the Assembly in the role of public member.
Neela Patel.
Good morning. My name is Neelu Patel. I was appointed by Governor Newsom in the advanced practice registered nursing role.
Our board's executive officer, Loretta Melby.
Thank you. This is Loretta Melby, or Lori, and I'm the board's executive officer appointed by the board.
And board counsel, Reza Pejuhesh.
Good morning. This is Reza Pejuhesh, attorney with the DCA Legal Affairs Division, and I'm the BRN's general counsel.
Thank you. Our quorum has been established for today's meeting. BRN moderator, will you please take us to open comment for items not on the agenda?
Good morning. This is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the board reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. We will also query the location in HQ1. I will then call on the individual and unmute their microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. I will not give a warning as your time approaches. I will mute your microphone and will announce that your time has exceeded the time allotted. I will then proceed to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. When your turn comes, you will be prompted to unmute. If your question can be answered, the board will respond accordingly. When making your comment, speak about anything you believe is important for the members to know. Remember, board members cannot address any item not on the agenda. Items not on the agenda at that moment and items that you would like to be added to a future meeting or items that will be discussed later in the agenda will be discussed at their correct times during the meeting. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when board or BRN staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphones. If I detect background noise during the meeting, as a result of unmuted microphones, I will mute their microphone automatically. We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
Board moderator, we do have a public comment here in Sacramento.
Thank you. Looks like we have 2 on the WebEx. So let's do the WebEx first. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Matthew A. would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Go ahead, Matthew.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Matthew, and I'm a California litigation attorney. I want to provide my contact information now so that Mr. Pejuhesh or other BRN legal staff or any other BRN member to contact me to further speak about the 5 issues I'll be discussing today. My number is 619-786-4992. Over the past few weeks, I've had at least a dozen intervention program participants contact me to tell me their stories. Given the importance of their stories, I'd ask that you provide me 4 minutes of your time today. Their stories are devastating, sad, and hopeless. While the events that led them into the intervention program are awful, that's not the sad part. What the program has done to them over the last year, however, is one of the goals of the intervention program, taken directly from the BRN's website, says providing help and hope for nurse participants. The BRN has absolutely failed this goal ethically and legally. Rather than providing help and hope, the BRN has retaliated against participants who've spoken out publicly against the unlawful program changes. I don't say retaliation as hyperbole or metaphorically, but in the legal sense. The BRN has taken nurses who have raised real concerns over this program and attempted to silence them through increasing requirements on them and indefinitely extending their time in the program. The first issue is a breach of contract. For those unfamiliar with what's happening, this mainly started about a year ago. At the time, participants were under contract that outlined their obligations to successfully complete the diversion program. Yet the BRN began changing requirements on participants who were mere weeks away from completing. New contracts, adding additional requirements such as work or narcotic access, were forced on participants under the threat of sign or be terminated from the program. Right now, there's no written criteria other than the recovery agreements, which were already breached, that say what participants must do to complete the program, but these are then changed at the whim of the BRN. The second issue is negligence. EC members and Maximus are liable for negligence. EC members have failed to read participants' files before directing participants on what they should do towards recovery. This is evident by EC members being unaware of what was discussed in prior EC meetings, not reviewing the notes, and forcing participants to do things they've already done for years in their recoveries during those meetings. Disturbingly, I was also sent multiple recordings where Maximus case managers admitted to not having read participants' files. These case managers then sit in EC meetings and help guide the EC on participants' recovery programs without knowledge of what is actually happening. The third issue is retaliation, as I mentioned in my intro. The BRN has retaliated against participants by forcing additional requirements on participants that speak out. Multiple participants have told me about how, without ever relapsing and maintaining impeccable compliance, they were forced back into recovery programs they previously successfully completed after they spoke out about the BRN's unlawful changes.
Matt?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, your time has gone over, but
Yes, so
they
board
would like to
moderator.
speak to you. Yes.
Board moderator, I know we asked for 4 minutes. We typically only give 2, but Matt, I was wondering if you had time to stay on the meeting. This is actually an agenda item 9.3, which is a presentation on the intervention program, including but not limited to stats, program updates, the intervention evaluation committee's role and responsibilities. And then the immediate following agenda item is to discuss possible regulatory language. Are you able to stay on and attend those, or I could confer with legal counsel if we can give you an additional 2 minutes?
I will try my best to stay on. I don't know how long the agenda items are going to go on for, and that's why I want to bring this up here in the beginning.
With regard to giving him more time, that's at the discretion of the board. Time limit has been in place to control when there's a whole bunch of people waiting to speak and avoiding that getting out of hand. So.
Okay. And is it appropriate to continue in the items not on the agenda forum that we're in right now, or direct him to 9.3?
I think he can go ahead and continue to make his comment here under items not on the agenda. Frankly, the specifics of the issues he's talking about might require a more precise agenda item to be added later on, but he can go ahead and conclude his comment, assuming the board's willing to grant him more time now, and then at 9.3, 9.4, if he's able to stick around, remain on hand, and then the board can decide whether this is something that needs to have further agenda items at subsequent meetings.
Thank you. Board President, do you like to allow him to have 2 more minutes? Yes. So go ahead. Thank you, Board Moderator. Matt, you can continue for 2 more minutes.
Thank you so much, and that's all I need. So just going back to the retaliation, in some cases, the BRN put participants who are mere weeks away from successful completion back to the start of their program for no other reason than that they were a squeaky wheel. The BRN has also punished participants for having symptoms caused by the BRN's actions. BRN participants who admitted to depression because of the new BRN requirements and the constant changes in the unknown have only been met with more forced requirements and changes. Participants are likely to never speak out about what's actually going on because the BRN is punishing them for when they do so. And shame on the BRN's contractor, Maximus, who's aware how egregious the retaliation has been and the changes, and has actively encouraged participants to speak out about all the recent changes, yet Maximus has sat back while participants have been retaliated against. The fourth item is the ADA, potential ADA violations. BRN is forcing participants with documented disabilities to work bedside. At least 2 nurses I've spoken with have provided disability documentation to Maximus and the BRN and have requested reasonable accommodations, yet they have largely been ignored and no reasonable accommodations given. Finally, the fifth item is civil rights violation for unequal application of the statutes. The uniform standard, which is what the BRN has based these new rule changes on, applies to both probation and diversion participants, yet the standards are interpreted differently for probation than they are for recovery participants, so the ones who are supposedly receiving the help and hope from the BRN. Probation participants are not required to undertake the same requirements that diversion participants are required to, and the uniform standards are not applied in an equal manner. Unfortunately, participants are between a rock and a hard place. Their direct complaints to the BRN are met with silence or retaliation, giving nurses limited options going forward, including seeking redress through the public court system. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the additional time.
Thank you for your comment. Chris Elsey, RN, would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Board moderator, did you see the comment above that from a participant named Neil?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay,
I have
good
it.
morning.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right,
good
Chris,
morning.
go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Chris Els. I'm have the honor of being the nurse support group facilitator for the BRN and Maximus program for San Luis Obispo County and the surrounding area. Also, kind of probably what I'm going to touch on is also Agenda 9.3 this morning, but I wasn't exactly sure how that fits into this discussion today. Recently, the BRN has been making changes to the contracted nurse diversion program called Maximus. Maximus has been around for many years and has proven success, and they claim a 93% success rate of 5 years of sobriety. Just a recent example of how the board has been interfering in their program. One of my nurses originally was not able to pass narcotics, so she took a job in dialysis. Just recently, she asked for the transition program, which is the final step of getting out of the Maximus chemical dependency program. And she was required to work at least 6 months and passing narcotics now. So she needs to find another job that she can actually pass narcotics in. She was actually relieved at one time that she would no longer have to practice narcotics in her nursing career because that was her drug of choice. And she just chose not to be around that anymore. I did recommend her for transition, but unfortunately she had to leave her current job and find another job in a nursing home that she can pass now narcotics. To hopefully get out of the Maximus program within the next year. She now has 2 years of sobriety. I don't see where this is any kind of evidence-based practice, having nurses pass narcotics to prove that they can now successfully be a nurse again. There are many nurses that don't pass narcotics, so if they choose to get a job in their normal normal field, now they have to go find something else. If they're in psych nurse or case management, now they have to now pass narcotics. I don't see where this would make any sense. We would not make a nurse go bartend to prove that they could successfully pass alcohol for 6 months before they graduated from the program. I think that's an apt analogy. I would like, the board to consider just having a lighter hand with nurses. We're here to support our nurses. We're here not to penalize them, and we do everything with evidence-based practice. And I don't see where the board is interfering in the Maximus diversion program, which, like I said, has a 93% success rate. I don't know if the board's probation program has an equal success rate. And the board is not run generally by chemical dependency counselors, which the Maximus program is. I think we should continue our funding of the Maximus program. I think it's been a value to our state, to our public service, and to our nurses. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anthony would like to
Board-
make a comment? Yes.
Board
go ahead.
moderator, before we go on to Anthony, Tricia has a comment.
Thank you. I look forward to discussing this in item 9.3, but could you just tell me, Lori, now we've had two comments that says the board has been making changes, and of course, the board has not been making changes. Could you just explain to us where those changes have been occurring?
So the changes occur with the intervention committee. And so the intervention committee, as well as our board staff, is put into place under statute. And that is in 27702. And it says each committee shall have the following composition: 3 RNs holding active California license who have demonstrated expertise in the field of chemical dependency or psychiatric nursing, 1 physician holding an active California license who specializes in the diagnosis and treatment of addictive diseases or mental illness, and 1 public member who is knowledgeable in the field of chemical dependency or mental illness. And so this intervention evaluation committee is created, it's established by the board. You guys do make votes on that at each meeting when we have new appointees. And they serve on this committee and make the recommendations. They do have a program manager that is board staff, and that program manager is designated by myself, and they have background experience with dealing with substance abuse issues as well. And so we will provide you guys with updates on that starting at 9.3 through 9.4. Thank you.
Thank you. Anthony would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm also not sure if my comment needs to be for 9.3 as well, but I just want to comment about these requirements, how they're more hurtful than harmful to the recovery process. This new requirement breaches many of the nurses' contracts where there's no mention, well, pretty much the same thing Matt said, where there's no mention for their mutual stipulation contracts that states that they have to pass narcotics to complete the program. Many have completed their obligations as far as inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, joining NA meetings, and being sober and continuing their sobriety. They've been subjected to random drug screenings to the tune of 10,000 to 15,000, not to mention follicle testing, leaving patches in their head. Can you imagine trying to be out of this program in January 2024, and here it is February 28th, and you're still not out the program where you've been tested recently 3 or 4 times back to back? And this is also forcing some of them to quit their jobs that they have as nurse case managers to try to find a job where they have to pass narcotics. Some of these nurses have had back surgeries, knee surgeries, carpal tunnel, and now you want them to be like, you want them to treat patients with narcotics, and it's unfair. And as when they ask who's implementing these rules, they can't get a straight answer. When they ask when does this start, they don't never get an answer. So I'm asking that you guys give some clarity, give some leverage, and if someone's completed their obligations in their contracts, to let them out. That's all.
Thank you for your comment. Neil would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Neil, you should be prompted on your computer with a box that says unmute me.
Board. I am reading the following on behalf of my partner who could not attend because of work responsibilities. She's a participant in the program. I am a nurse anesthetist. I entered the intervention program over 3 years ago, and I was granted transition last year. I anticipated completion of the transition stage and the program this year. In January, I was informed that I was now required to do an additional 2 years because I am a CRNA. I was told I am doing everything correctly, that I have an excellent record and consistently demonstrate commitment to my recovery, myself, and the patients I serve. But the BRN is enforcing a blanket requirement without consideration of the individual participant. I am not the only nurse who has been recently told the requirements have changed and the length of time in the program has been extended. As participants, we have successfully upheld the conditions of our contracts. The BRN's decision to change the rules as we near anticipated completion is unjust, demoralizing, and emotionally manipulative. There comes a time when monitoring through the intervention program ceases to be supportive and assistive in recovery, but instead becomes a punitive means of control. The intervention program impacts our finances, career opportunities, and personal freedoms. It limits our aspirations and goals, and its negative consequences are felt by the participants themselves, their families and loved ones, and their employers. Personally, I want to return to my home in another state to be closer to my family and dearest friends. However, until I am granted program completion, I cannot apply for a license in a different state, effectively forcing me to live and work in California in order to maintain my career. Having to wait an additional 2 years to move towards one of my most important goals is discouraging. I am being told to bide my time, just keep on doing what I am doing in the meantime. The BRN justifies additional requirements as a means of protecting the public and ensuring safety of the patient. I assure you, my commitment to the patients I serve is not influenced by the intervention program and additional monitoring, but my own desire to provide patients with the highest quality of care and the best outcomes. I asked the BRN to reconsider the new requirements for participants who have been in the intervention program and have consistently maintained the expectations placed upon them. Many of us have repeatedly proven dedication to our recovery and our practice as nurses, advanced practice nurses, and nurse anesthetists. We are providing safe, excellent patient care, not because of extended time in the intervention program, but in spite of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests on the WebEx. You said you have people there in attendance. Would you
We
like
do.
them to? Okay, go ahead.
Melanie, you'll have to push the button right there. Perfect. And then bring it down to you.
Good morning. My name is Melanie Rowe. I'm a CRNA, Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist. I'm the Practice Division Director for the California Association of Nurse Anesthesiology. In January, the Stanislaus Surgical Hospital in Modesto underwent an inspection by the California Department of Public Health. The surveyors falsely claimed that CRNAs were not practicing within the scope of their practice according to the BRN. On February 2nd, 2024, the CRNAs received a letter from hospital administrators suspending their practice. CRNAs lost their jobs, and a community lost valuable anesthesia care because of the false information from the CDPH. The 2567 report is required to be reported for each survey. As of today, still no report is detailing their deficiencies. While CANA respects the work CDPH does to ensure facilities are in compliance with state laws and regulations, the CRNAs were terminated, were practicing according to the Nurse Practice Act within their scope of practice and according to hospital policies. The false claims regarding our scope of practice were actually specifically clarified by the Board of Nursing in 1988. The actions of the survey team and their misinformation seems to be an isolated event, because in January and February of this year, we are aware of 4 other surveys at different facilities that were conducted without issue or concern when CRNAs were practicing at the top of our license and our education. However, the repercussion and harm caused by the survey is multiplying. It has raised confusion about CRNA practice in the state, as demonstrated by an increased rate of inquiries from other facilities to CANA, clarifying CRNA scope of practice in California using specifics from this hospital. CANA would like to make the board aware of the situation and ask for immediate direction and response from the BRN to CDPH before additional harm is done to facilities and Californians who need our expert anesthesia care. Thank you.
Thank you. And for full transparency to the board, they did reach out to me. I'm aware of this. I'm working with legal counsel, our board's legal counsel on this one, as well as DCA's legal counsel on a response for this. It is also slotted that this will be an agenda item at the next board meeting.
Board President Trujillo, was that your only comment there in attendance?
Yes, it appears so.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you. Moving on to item 4.0. This is the review and possible action approval of prior minutes for November 15th through 16th, 2023.
Board President, the meeting materials for the minutes were not approved for posting. And so we will be removing that agenda item from this meeting and adding these meeting minutes to the next board meeting, please.
Thank you. Moving on to 5.0. This is the report of the Administrative Committee. Lori?
Okay, so 5.0, we will start with the executive officer's report. And what seems to be the most effective is just kind of to share what I've been focused on over the last few months in between board meetings. So I've had several meetings with DCA regarding military licensing, IT improvements. We've been working with HCI. I attended fiscal regulatory workshops on economic and fiscal impacts, leadership training, the director's quarterly, board presidents and EO training, and the LEDGE roundtable. I did also meet with Jessica Pitt from Labor, Rebecca Lowenfelt and Isabel Aldana from Healthcare Career Advancement Program with a focus on nursing apprenticeships. I will be presenting at the CACN Spring Conference in April. And I have additionally met with CACN regarding their our bill, AB 2015, that will be discussed later on in the agenda. We also had a meeting with HCI regarding the data collection from license renewals. So anytime a licensee goes and renews, they're sent to an HCI survey where they answer workforce data. I did meet with Senator Roth's office on their bills that are affecting the BRN. My chief of legislation and I did attend the professional licensing requirement interstate compacts kind of forum on that. They talked about impacts, opportunities, and considerations. I also met with Cal State University with her regarding BRN legislations and then questions on the baccalaureate pilot. That's another bill that's introduced, will be discussed later on. Additionally, I've met with National Council of State Boards of Nursing regarding their examination, their regulation group update, FITS training, the Advanced Practice RN Knowledge Network, EO Leadership Council, the National Practice Data Bank, compliance audit, and education call, and continuing to work with them on Operation Nightingale, where there was fraudulent nursing programs out of Florida. I also participate in the Interagency Committee on Apprenticeship. We've met with DEA to discuss diversion and working together on interventions. I have presented at the COADN South conferences, and we will be presenting soon next month at their in-person conference. I have met with CANA on their potential bill, their bill that has been introduced as well, and I've met with them regarding the issue that was just shared in public comment. I've met with the CNA on their bill introductions for this year as well. I attended a drug of abuse recognition webinar. I met with Senate BNP on the implementation of AB 890 and concerns around that. I also met with the Nurse Practitioner National Certification Organizations from the various bodies out there on AB 890 to discuss legacy certifications. I was on the healthcare workforce in the West quarterly call. I attended the Vault question and answer session that is done to review the prior year. I did attend a labor and workforce developing agency meeting. I also worked with CGFNS on the nurse migration report, learning that more nurses are being denied visas from other countries because they have a severe nursing shortage. And so they are being denied a visa to be able to travel into the US. I also met with California Hospital Association and their CNAs. Some of the upcoming things that will be happening with the board, this is separate from my meetings, is we are working with occupational analysis to review the NCLEX and the appropriateness for use here in California. And that is something that is statutorily required as a continual review, even though that is also something that's done through NCSBN. Another big update for our board right now is that there has been a telework change. The board, we went home office and telework based at the start of COVID and have been coming back into office with telework agreements. It was just sent down from DCA that they are supporting a telework in office at a minimum of 2 days per week. And then 3 days can be out of office. And so we're working to implement that with a goal of implementation April 2nd. Additionally, we do have a building update. BRN headquarters has some water infiltration issues, and we're working with the building to mitigate that. And so there will be some changes and stuff that happen with that. Additionally, there was a budget update. As you guys can imagine, we've been hearing with that with the governor. And so with that, we are having to get exemptions and stuff to do any kind of travel. We have been able to get exemptions for work, and we have been able to continue with that. And so that's wonderful. And then today I will be taking a break from 1 to 2 p.m. We will be having a lunch at that point for everybody. And I will be attending an FBI and DOJ audit that the BRN will be going through at that point. Any questions? Thank you. That is information only. So we do not need a board motion or a vote, but we can go out to public comment.
BRN moderator, please open us up for public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
Board moderator, there are no public comments in Sacramento.
Thank you. Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no public requests for comments there in your location. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you. Moving on to item 5.2. This is information only, 2022 to 2025 strategic plan and goal progression.
Thank you. So the strategic plan and goal projection, let me not stumble. The strategic plan and goal progression chart was added to the meeting materials yesterday. I do want to apologize for that. We've been pulled in multiple directions, as you can imagine, with working with our building and trying to get that water mitigated. And so with that, there are some updates consistent with the process that we used last time. We highlighted in yellow all of the updated changes. And so you can go down to page 6. There is an update on the out-of-state license by examination, reduce the processing times to 4.8 weeks. And that was that we did successfully implement with the help of DCA. We take no credit with this. They introduced a military portal. We are getting positive feedback from that. What that portal does is the person under orders, military orders, will access that portal, and they are allowed to come into California without a California RN license, and they are allowed to practice as a RN in the state of California based on that federal portability. And so that has been implemented. We do maintain a listing of that so that employers can access that listing to ensure that they have been approved by our board to be put on that list so that they can seek employment here in California. It is very important to know that they are not licensed as a practitioner in California, but we do have the ability to investigate and potentially provide discipline if we do find that some issues have occurred. Further down on page 8, it does talk about a fee waiver. So in partnership with DCA, the public health nurse fee for renewals, as well as new PHN certificate attainment starting January 1 has been waived. And that is pursuant to SB 72, the Budget Act of 2023. One other thing to call to your attention is that the BRN did ask to have a bill introduced, and Assemblymember Patterson did do that for us, and AB 2471 has been introduced, and that is to remove the renewal fee for the public health nurse going forward, and that will be discussed further in the legislative section of our board meeting. On page 8, there was an update previously. You can see above that on N where we executed contract with a company known as Horn. We are now, we have trained them. They are issuing license by endorsement, and they are working with us to clear out any potential backlog. One of the most interesting things that they are doing is they're providing what's called a concierge service. When people turn in an application that is complete, we're able to process that within days. When they turn in an application that is incomplete, we send them deficiencies, and sometimes that could sit for months because they may not understand exactly what is deficient. And so with this, what these contracted staff are doing is making phone calls and reach out and making contact, walking them through that process, and have been able to license quite a few. We are continuing to work with that and monitor that. They are scheduled to be here through this year. Down on page 11, we are just continuing to work with the Division of Investigations on a referral and triage pilot. We've been under MOU with them, with DCA as well, doing a pilot on case referrals and such. And there's been some updates to their methods, and we're continuing to work with them on that to devise a plan of what cases will stay with BRN, how they'll triage and process through, and which ones will go to D of I. On page 13 or 12, not counting the cover page, we're on to goal 3, continuing education. We're just continuing our partnership with OIO to map that out. The goal is to create a data bank that will allow for searching of all continuing education providers that are approved here in California, as well as a comprehensive listing of each one of the courses that they provide, so that we can start our every 5-year audit for all of our providers. The next one on continuing education is just a repeat of the same goal. On educational oversight under goal 4, we did update where we did submit a legislative proposal. Assemblymember Schiavo picked it up. It is AB 2015. It is to streamline our faculty approval process for our pre-licensure academic settings. Right now it's a 10-step process. This moves it to a 5-step process and changes it. And that will be discussed much more in depth by our Chief of Legislation when we get into that area on the legislative updates. Moving on to goal 4.2 of educational oversight on page 15, just continuing to collaborate with DCA to get some type of an enrollment IT tool that will kind of update all the movement of our schools throughout the state. We want it to be put forth on a Tableau format of an interactive map that will show increase and decrease throughout the state by school, and also have their current enrollment numbers by school. So you guys can definitely see the end of what our nursing students are in California. Right now, we have about 30,000, and it's fairly equally split at the last data numbers that I've have of about 48-52 for public versus private. And so it'd be great information to have at our fingertips. And I love the DCA's interactive map, so I want to steal that from them and have that onto our website. So we're continuing to work with that. The next one is page 18 and on 4.4 educational oversight, just ongoing updates on 16 CCR 1426. We have another agenda item to kind of discuss that, and that's where we're at in the rulemaking process so that we can align with our statute. And then there are updates on goal number 5, laws and regulations, on RS&T on page 20. And it really just talks about doing some various trainings, working with the CRNAAC public members and holding our first meetings, and just kind of moving towards that. So those meetings were held, and that's another agenda item, and I'll further elaborate on that. Goal 5.2, discuss some of the meetings, and they're repetitive of the ones above, where we talked about the military portability, the public health nurse waiver, et cetera. And so then we did complete a Form 100 on goal number 5.3, and that's page 22. Form 100s are regulatory change without any direct impact or any kind of change with that. And so typically you'll see things on their renumbering or a misspelling, or where it directly conflicts with the new statute. And so we can repeal or remove. And then the final F and G, we will update at a different agenda item lower down. Goal 6 on organizational development on page 24. We did release the fall BRN report, September 2023, and we did hold the BRN all staff meeting in November 2023. And then to close out, I believe page 26 on 6.3, there was an update just covering the presentations that occurred at the last board meeting with NCSBN. Any questions on the goal progression chart for the strategic plan? Yes, Allison.
Yeah, this is Board Member Cormack. Thank you so much, Executive Director Officer Melby, for that. It's a little hard in Goal 1 to extract from that how we're doing on the phone lines, which has, been a long-standing discussion. So, can you just tell us a little bit about? I assume Horn is backfilling for the vacancies. We've been unable. Yeah. Oh, well. Anyway, if you could just connect the dots for us on the phone lines and the Goal 1, and it to the extent that the contractor is helping.
So the Horn staff are with licensing and not with our public information unit. So our public information unit is outside of licensing currently. And so what we have discovered is that within the public information unit, or what they also call the call center, depending on who you're referring to, we call it public information unit or PIU, 90% of the calls that they answer for us are licensing related. And so you don't call the BRN to say, hey, you guys are doing a great job. They usually call BRN and say, hey, where's my license? What's happening here? So our goal over the last few years was to kind of take it from a nursing perspective. And that's kind of where I did that, where it's like, you don't treat the symptoms, you treat the cause. The cause of these phone calls are licensing and going through and updating processes, getting all that done. What Horn is doing is they're supplementing our staff. They are not in lieu of our staff. Our staff are still here. Our staff are still processing all of the applications that they normally would do. What was discovered is that, again, when you turn in an application that's 100% complete, they're able to review that as soon as fingerprints hit and they're clear, they're licensed. And it's they were able to do this in a very timely manner with a lot of the IT updates that we've implemented over the last few years. What becomes problematic is within our statutory requirements, we have specific education requirements, which require primary source data for transcript receipt. When those transcripts are not received, or they're received after the application is submitted and potentially have a different last name, when degree was granted or such, those forms come in and they're not immediately attached to that record, and that therefore then not reviewed. They go into a holding, kind of waiting until we can find out, because we don't automatically know that, my prior married name is not what is now on my current transcript. And so we can't match those. So with this service that Horn is coming in and providing, they're reaching out, they're doing a phone call connect. And they say, oh, well, I turned in my transcripts. Okay, well, when did you turn them in? And so then we can go to the month where we received those transcripts, and then we can ask the questions that say, was it under a different last name? Did you have something else so we can search for it? And then we're able to find that. What we do find out is that sometimes these applications were part of a batch job from a travel agency, and the applicant was not even aware that they applied to California. And they didn't pursue continuing that application because they didn't even know that they had applied here. So we're able to close those applications. The other time that we can do is when we get in touch with them is we could find out that they're no longer interested in coming to California because they did receive a traveling assignment in another state, or they have chosen to move to another state. And so then we can close those applications out. And so over the last while, we have cleared what we have deemed a backlog of those deficient applications with the help of Horn. Again, our licensing staff is still involved in that, still doing their normal day-to-day. And we're reviewing those processes. We're seeing if they can move to advanced practice, seeing if there's any assistance that can be given to international. And originally we had planned to put a few of those staff into our public information unit for assistance, but that is a very complex job. You can get questions, any type of questions, and without extensive training, they may not be able to answer those. And so our call volume still remains very high. And we're just continuing to answer them as they come. We do have a response within 24 to 48 hours because they do leave a message number, and we do call back. Some of those numbers are repeat callers, and some will call from multiple phone devices. So they'll have their cell phone, their daughter's cell phone, their spouse's cell phone, and they all leave the same number trying to get into the BRN. And so we are able to clear those once we do get a hold of them, and then they'll say, oh, well, I called here, I called here, called here. So still working through that. There's a lot of work still left to be done.
Thanks for that. I think we had also talked about the opportunity to have a chat box on the website. Is that something that I know that we have to make an IT request for that?
So we have met
So much easier when you're, you can continue doing your work and you don't have to listen to the whole music while you have your little chat box waiting.
Well, the good thing
Not
is
that I might have
there
done that with.
is no hold music.
Okay, good.
That's actually one of the things that we stopped in, I think, 2020, 2021. I don't remember the dates exactly with that. We had a dilapidated telephone system. It would hang up on callers. It wasn't able to support the volume that we got at all. And it did have a hold function, and people did stay on hold upwards to 8 hours and then get disconnected. It was not functioning at all. We were able to work with DCA and get a new phone system installed. We do work with that, and we decided not to have a hold function. So it is a callback only.
Okay.
And so if you get in and speak with somebody, you're answered right on the spot. There is a phone tree that you go through when you first call in. And so if you're wanting to get scope of practice, you push the button, you go to a nursing education consultant. It does not go to our public information unit. If it's an enforcement issue, you can push the button, bypass public information, and go to enforcement. And so it does help to kind of direct traffic per se at that particular point. But again, most of those calls are licensing related, and those do go to our public information unit. And if you are not able to be answered on the spot by a person, you do put in your phone number, and then we do call you back. And so there is no more sitting on hold, which is a bonus, honestly. People may not think that, but we were receiving so many complaints about cell phone batteries dying, and they had to go back to work, and they're still on hold, and they didn't want to lose their place in the queue.
Well, it definitely sounds like an improvement, but I think there's still room to improve. If we can do
A lot.
chatbots, that would be great. So is that something we're asking from the IT folks?
We did ask for
Chatbots, sorry, chat box.
Yeah, we did ask for a chat bot, and it is something that DCA would support. However, that is trained on your website.
Oh,
And
right,
our
right, right, right.
website is
Yeah.
not ready for that.
So when's the website getting updated?
That is a very good question. I do not have an ETA on that.
All right. Okay.
We are actively working. We have all 4 of our advisory committees up and running for the APRN. A lot of them have specific subcommittees focused on updating the website. And so they're helping to give us some input on that. We do have Macaulay Fuserans, our chief of licensing. She works with me almost daily on updating that. I'm going to call him out. He's in the room. Matthew Yates, when he gets phone calls, because he is over board consumer services and operations, and he will get phone calls that says, hey, I noticed this, and then he's right on it as well. And so he'll update those sections of the website real time when those come into us. But that website is a beast. And so that will take some time to get that ready. Once that is ready, then we'll be able to move with DCA to get a bot.
Well, let us know how we can help.
Yes. Yes, Tricia.
Well, thank you very much for this really detailed and ambitious strategic plan. And it is nice to see how much progress you're making.
Thank you.
I especially appreciate the efforts toward updated technology.
Yes.
And so thank you. But reading a strategic plan like this, it's really hard to tell like where the really intractable things are. And I mean, if you could just maybe highlight some of the things that are, that you're really struggling to meet in this strategic plan.
All of the above. No, I'm sorry.
I mean, you've met so many of the goals, which is very impressive. I just, it's hard for me to read this, in a vacuum and kind of wonder like where you're struggling and where we might help.
I think it's just the nature of how the board comes into its role, and that's through legislation. So every single year is a legislative session. We've got, I think, 19 bills to be discussed. And so every time you get a new bill that gets passed, then we have a new law and we have to implement that. And so that will always affect our strategic plan. So it's a living and breathing document, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at that. But it does cause strategic plans to have to be relooked at, realigned, and we're only able to do anything that is within our authority that is covered within statute. Additionally, all of our IT updates, that is a very difficult and lengthy process because we do not have our own IT. Our IT is done through pro rata with the Department of Consumer Affairs. Under DCA, they have multiple boards and bureaus. And so when we put in an IT request, it gets put into a queue. And then we wait for our turn. We do on a regular basis put things through as high priority, low priority, and help them with that. My assistant executive officer over there, Yvonne Leonard-Tapp, she attends those meetings and she tries desperately to plead our case because we are a large board and it does affect a lot of people. So we try desperately to get those moved up. We have hired an independent contractor for the last 3 years that works on BRN IT stuff specifically as well, just to try to move some things through. But it's overwhelming at times because there's so many things that need to be done. We do have 10 projects in place right now that we're doing a project management kind of group specifically with DCA. And it is a BRN modernization process. And we're working closely with them. We do meet about 3 times a week to ensure that stuff continues to move. But as they move, those projects sometimes grow. And I am definitely guilty of making them grow instead of wrapping them up. And so that becomes an issue as well. So licensing, as soon as we get some IT and we're able to work through step by step, I think we'll see some of those issues kind of resolve themselves. One of the big things on there that did resolve was the California graduate. They were waiting greater than 3 months for their authorization to test after completing their nursing program. That is now instantaneous for them. So with working with DCA's IT, there is a suggestion that says, well, why don't we have a portal where the directors from the school can just come in there and say, yeah, they graduated from our school. So we implemented that. brand spanking new, and it works like a charm. So within, as soon as the degree has been conferred by the school, the program director signs into our portal. They say, yes, they've met all the education requirements. They've already applied. We have their fingerprints. They get the authorization to test. That goes electronically overnight to National Council of State Boards of Nursing and Pearson VUE. Pearson VUE then 24 hours later gives an email, says you're cleared to test, schedule. And then as soon as that person is able to take the test, if they pass, within 24 hours, a license is issued. And that's, of course, pending any kind of potential enforcement issues if those are discovered or some fingerprint delays. But other than that, it is completely automated. And when you have about 20,000 students in California, those licensees getting that kind of taken care of was amazing. Then when we went to license verification and utilizing nurses for that, which again is an outside company through NCSBN, that really sped up the process and decreased the cost. And so by doing those huge updates, it has allowed for our licensing staff to be much more focused on your international and your US and work through those processes, which now is where Horn has come in and they're working on it as well. But until we can get through licensing, that phone system's gonna be inundated. But light at the end of the tunnel. Absolutely. Yes, Nilu.
Board Member Patel here. Thank you, EO Melby, for the extensive review of the strategic plan. And it's great to hear how much has been accomplished over the course of the years. I have a specific question regarding the DCA, the Federal Professional License Portability Act. And you mentioned that the board has the ability to provide approval for RNs interested in working in the state, as well as the opportunity to discipline if necessary. Can you elaborate a little bit about how the board is going to be involved in the approval process of RNs wanting to work here, since it is a federal sort of mandate?
It is a federal mandate. However, it is a DCA-wide issue. And DCA at the last legislative session put in a bill that made it California specific. And so we are not able to approve necessarily, but we add them to our listing if they meet the qualifications that are set out. Those qualifications are minimal. That is that they're licensed in another state. That is that they have military orders. And that's essentially it. So if those two things are there, we do the listing and they are then added to that list. They don't have to meet our licensing requirements. So we do not check fingerprints. We do not check education preparation, which we do for our endorsement applicants. So it is strictly just, we're kind of referencing it as kind of a military compact. We know they're here. And employers can check that listing to see that they are legally allowed to be here and work. And that's it. Now, if we do receive complaints, because all complaints come in through the same process through enforcement, and we look it up in our BREEZE system and says, wait, this is not our licensee, then we can go and check that listing and say, okay, they're part of that listing. And then we do have some authority that was granted to us that does allow us to pursue some disciplinary action if needed.
And do you know if they will be able to work in civilian hospitals or just military hospitals?
So that's the change. So prior to this Military Portability Act, anybody that was an active duty military person can work in any federal agency in a hospital and not be licensed in California, but they were limited to those healthcare type facilities. On this, they are not limited to a federal facility. They can work in any civilian hospital and throughout the state, or even other healthcare facilities. It doesn't even have to be a hospital base, but they're not limited to any federal buildings. Mary.
Again, thank you for the progress for, so many of the strategic plan priorities. One of the things that I think has been really exciting is that legislation that now is being introduced for the nursing instructors to be able to be listed on the BRN site as opposed to each school having to do each instructor separately. And that was introduced by Assemblymember Schiavo, is that the correct pronunciation? Yes. Can you speak a little bit to what is the process that the BRN uses in order to work with the legislators when there is an important priority like that we would like introduced into legislation?
Marissa? No. So what has happened is we do kind of like a green belt kind of lean process. And we're like, okay, we're looking at this. And then we say, okay, we can only go so far with what we currently have in regulations or in statute. When it's a regulatory issue, we can update regs, and that's about a 1 to 2 year process. It goes through the Office of Administrative Law, and then we can implement that on approval. When you have authority in regulation that can only be adjusted so much, then we need to look at, okay, what can we do statutorily wise? And that has to be a bill introduction. And so the biggest move for this one is not really to change our faculty approval process per se, it's to change their entry. And so with the current regulation, it's under our school approval, and it is strictly done through the nursing program director. We want this to be a license driven item. And so that has to have a different statutory process for that. So that had to be updated through a legislative process. So we wrote up a concept paper, we wrote up some sample language, and we pretty much put it out to various stakeholders to kind of see what their thoughts were, received some feedback on that, and then Marissa shopped it around to say if there was anybody out there that was willing to pick up a bill for the board and move that forward. And we did have somebody that was willing to, and it has been introduced, and we're working closely with them and the stakeholders as this moves through the legislative process.
So Marissa is basically acting as our lobbyist in this regard?
Not, that's a bad word. No, I'm joking. No, we cannot have lobbyists as part of the Board of Registered Nursing, but she is our chief of legislation. And so she utilizes that role to have these discussions to see what is available for us and then provide any kind of information that's needed.
And tell me why we're not able to have lobbyists.
That is a good question, Matt. You got me on that one. I don't know why we can't have a lobbyist. I don't know that. And Marissa's running to the front. Yay. On the bottom. Yeah, there you go.
Got it. Hello, good morning, everyone. Marissa Clark, Chief of Legislative Affairs. So most state departments they kind of name them different things: Deputy Director of Legislative Affairs, Legislative Advocates, and our job is to liaison with the legislature, similar to how a private sector lobbyist would. We just represent the government entity that we work for. And so I essentially, as Lori said, we decided this was a need. We kind of put together a justification. Depending on where you are in the government, there's different kind of channels you have to go through. Since we are a semi-autonomous board, we have less channels, which is nice. We can reach directly out to the legislature. So in terms of identifying, I think it's similar to what any other kind of stakeholder would do, is you look at the content matter of the bill, and you look at maybe some members who may have a passion in that area, may have background knowledge in that area, and kind of approach and say, hey, this is what we're trying to change. This is what we think the outcome would be. Would the member be interested? And they'll usually do their due diligence. It's also good to always go to the policy committees that you go through and kind of run it through them, get their thoughts on it. So it follows a lot of the same processes. It's just each state department, each board, et cetera, has someone who works for them that is that liaison. And that's what I do for you all. But I'm a public sector employee,
So in a public agency, we're not able to have a formal lobbyist?
No, I don't believe that we can contract government dollars with lobbying, with tax dollars, public dollars. I think there's typically rules about those being used. Yeah.
You could jump in, Matt.
So technically we fall under the executive branch. We're under the gov.
It's on, he's just not speaking loud.
So technically we fall under the executive branch as a department. So we can't have lobbyists that we pay to go lobby for us, but Marissa will introduce legislation on behalf of the board members. So you can propose it, then she can shop it to the members, and the members can bring it forward. And the members bring the bill goes to the governor signs it into law, and then we do the process, we enact it, we do the work behind it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So because we do the work, we can't advocate on our behalf. We're the regulatory body of nursing for California. We can't advocate for nurses. Does that make sense?
We are essentially also who gets lobbied.
Is
Yeah,
that-
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I
right,
think
right,
that's a
right.
good way to
Exactly.
put it.
That's
So
a
the
good,
lobbyists will
that's a
lobby
really
the
good way to put it.
legislature, the executive branch, you know what? So we are the ones that, I meet with many lobbyists, but we are the
Yes.
ones that get lobbied because we are the entity that
So
implements the bills.
stakeholders can come in front of the board, nonprofits
Mhm.
or for-profit, and say, hey, I have this idea and I'd like to bring it forward to the board. And then you guys could say, hey, this is a good idea. We want to do it. And then Marissa would go and shop it. Or those same stakeholders could go to a legislative office and say, I have this idea. That bill comes up. And then as a board, we would review it. And then we would give our input to the legislature about how we feel about this particular piece of legislation, which are about to do today.
Yeah, so when the board takes a vote in support or opposition or whatever, we would be able to do that. What a lot of times happens in between board votes is I get implementation questions a lot, Marissa and I do. And so we're able to, without saying the board supports or not supports, able to look at the bill and say, if it is introduced, if it does pass, what needs to happen for us to implement it? And so we stay very neutral at that point and say, okay, this would conflict with this would conflict with this, or this is right in alignment with this, or this can update here, or I know that this is your process and you want this to implement. You would also need to look at this statute, this reg, this other statute, because they all kind of work together. And so we're able to give them a lot of direction on what would need to occur in order for that bill to be implementable if it passes. But we cannot tell them, oh, this is bad or this is good unless we have a board vote. And then if it is support, we can tell them why we support it. If it's an opposed, we can tell them why that we oppose, but that happens after a board meeting.
I'm just wondering, because it seems like so many of the things, especially things that keep us from being as efficient as we want to do, we're like, we can't do that because it's statutory. I'm thinking of like the out-of-state fingerprints, the paper fingerprints that end up having to be done again and again and again is a barrier. And if we had more resources to be able to identify what are those things that we would like to do differently, but for some regulatory or statutory reason, we're not able to. If we had more people to work on some of those packages, would that really help us improve some of the processes?
I think Marissa would like to have more people. Absolutely. And if I had about 5 Marissas, I would probably not have to work as much. It'd be fantastic. Again, that comes down to like budget and everything with that. But one of the examples that you just gave right now on fingerprints, that's not even within our purview. So that's not something that we can introduce legislation on because that falls under the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice has the rules that say you can only go to an in-state licensed live scan operator for this process in the state of California. And so the Department of Justice would have to do something that would then allow that to change, whether or not that licensed California live scan operator can do that outside of California. Right now they can't. Or whether or not they can even accept that. But again, that's not even under our jurisdiction. So we couldn't even ask for a statutory change for that. That would have to be done through Department of Justice.
Yeah, this is a question that comes up a lot about the fingerprints and just it's who has jurisdiction.
Mhm.
So in California, we require fingerprints. Our Department of Justice only has the jurisdiction over the state of California on how to collect those fingerprints. So it's not that we lack the technology for someone in Alaska to be able to fingerprint and send it to California. It's that the California Department of Justice can't tell the state of Alaska how we want those fingerprints collected or what information we need. So that's an important distinction, is that we govern just the state of California. So we have to think about it in those terms, if that's helpful. So when we do get out of state fingerprints, we require a hard card to be sent here, and then it's processed by our California Department of Justice in their manner that they do it, if that makes sense.
I guess. Thanks.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Vicky.
I'm not exactly sure how to say this, but we've had some recent agenda items where legislators got information from a source, and it was misinformation. And we don't have any significant ability with staffing to correct that misinformation on a large scale. And I think it does a great disservice to the work that staff does and that we try to do. And I don't know how we respond to that, but I remember reading all the legislator letters with all the misinformation, and If we were in private industry, there would be a PR firm that would reach out to those legislators and say, here is the factual information. And I know you try to do that. But the budgets of some of these for-profit organizations, because you can Google that information and find out how much they're spending, we don't have that. And a lot of misinformation gets out there that leads to decisions that are difficult for us to then do what we might want to do differently.
Definitely, we experience that on a regular basis, not just with legislative staff or that. We even the stakeholders that we see that are part of academia, they'll go off of word of mouth versus going off of what's written in statute or regs. We get that from licensees. I mean, as an RN, I'm a licensee, and before coming to the board, I would hear all the time that says, "Oh, I don't want to work out of staffing. I'm going to lose my license." We do not suspend license if you work out of a staffing ratio. Not at all. I mean, that's not under the jurisdiction of the BRN, but that is definitely something that RNs state all the time. If I work out of my staffing ratio, I'm going to lose my license. It's incorrect. And so these are the things that, I mean, obviously you heard that lengthy list of what I do in a 3-month period to meet with people in addition to the regular job. And that is really just to get the information out there. I do so many speaking engagements, so many question answers. I work with Reza extensively on just getting updates out, and he gets inquiries all the time through Department of Consumer Affairs that he has to respond to. We get Public Record Act requests, and we submit that information out. We get media inquiries all the time. And under Marissa's direction, she has a person that handles all of our media inquiries. And Reza and I work to respond timely to those and get that information out. But when we do hear, which sometimes we're the last people to hear, that there is misinformation out there, and we'll ask and we'll do a reach out, sometimes we're not even responded to. And if they are responded to, it's not from the person, but it may be from the staff that respond to us, which sometimes that's effective, sometimes that's not effective. And sometimes even when we're meeting with various lobbyists, various representatives, and trying to get the information out, that information is not received well. And then we have to go and do further information and provide a bunch of evidence base and kind of try to correct that way as well.
I think you all do an amazing job, but there's no way that you can do enough to correct the misinformation. So what I'm asking, is there anything that we might be able to do to try to augment what you're doing in a more focused manner where that's just what that individual does?
Not that I'm aware of. Marissa, do you have any thoughts that,
I mean,
under our purview?
yeah, I think in terms of, if you're just talking like another legislative advocate position, that, you know, division of responsibilities, one's more just around engagement, one's more analysis. In terms of an external firm, I don't believe so. I will say that this now being the 4th state entity I've worked at, it's a common problem, right? Because, you know, we move a little bit slower, we go through certain channels, and the nature of policy a lot of times is trying to explain really, really complex topics in bite-sized pieces. And so people kind of grab those bite-sized pieces, and sometimes it's through no disingenuousness of the person putting it forward, but it's a very high level thing. And so the reality of policy is it's always very nuanced. It's always very complex. There's always layers to it. So we're always kind of fighting an uphill battle of making sure that people understand the whole picture, you know, not just kind of the bite size. And I've found that is something that is a constant goal at every state entity I've worked at in various systems. I will say one of my personal goals, and I feel like I've seen improvement, this now being the 2nd year going in, of just building those relationships where people, staffers and whatnot, do reach out in the beginning and ask questions and want to learn. I've seen a positive already this introduction year, just people wanting to say, hey, I'm interested in this bill. Can we talk to you about it? And that really gives us a chance to kind of provide our feedback. I think your point is very well taken that there's many, many other entities out there kind of also doing that with a lot of force. But I will say I've seen small improvement. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think it's kind of a struggle that many state departments face in terms of trying to really have folks understand the wholeness of a policy issue versus kind of the tagline, if you will.
And sometimes I really think it isn't the complexity of the issue at all.
True.
David.
I agree with Vicky, and I appreciate and understand the frustration. As a public member on the outside, I know how proactive other associations can be in sponsoring a bill, in drafting the legislation for the senator, and then having it supported by the whole association, and then having it move through the body. What I see is they have the freedom to be proactive because they're not limited as a government agency or as a state representative, which we are. So I'm not as frustrated by not being able to be proactive, but my hope, and I suppose my question is, when we do support legislation, which seems to be our one bit of advocacy we can do, does it hold the weight of any other elephant in the room, like a larger association, that anyone in the legislators waiting to hear how are they going to move, or what position is the BRN going to take? Because that will totally influence X, Y, and Z.
Right. And I think it depends. I think it depends on the issue and the member, but that is personally one of my biggest goals, and what I see the role of this in is to make sure that when we do engage, it doesn't necessarily we always have to support or oppose or whatnot, but when we engage from a place of informed and good faith and coming with a very reliable position. And I feel like that the reputation is continuing to build and improve. I would like it to go farther. And that is something that can take time, right? Because we have to just prove over and over again that we are in this for the best outcome of the board for public safety, and we are informed in our word and what we say. And then us as an entity, I think will hold the weight that we would hope to hold as that kind of implementing body, if that helps.
I think the other thing you want to consider is that we also are a barrier to it. An advocate group can come in and say, this is a great idea, we want to see it, move it forward. But then they come to us and they say, okay, how are you going to implement? And then the other question is, how much is it going to cost?
Yeah.
And that's where we become a barrier to it, is that we're the reality of, yeah, that's a great idea, but it's going to cost $3 million to do that every year. And that's something they have to consider. And in today's environment, it's a lot harder with our current budget situation than, say, 5 years ago. But just something to consider is that we're also the barrier to this as well.
And then sometimes if there's extensive items that need to change, even if we do have the budget, we have to request a delayed implementation, which could be, a year or two, depending on what we're able to do. Nilu.
Board Member Patel here. Again, I agree with Vicky, and I have similar concerns regarding trying to stay ahead of that misinformation out there. For instance, we heard from a public member out here who had mentioned, misinterpretation by a state agency, which is CPDH, regarding, CRNA practice. So how do we get ahead of that? Just correcting that state agency. I know, Reza, you're working hard on that, again, with EO Melby on that, but, just staying ahead, not only with legislators, but also with the public agencies as well.
Thank you. Any more questions on the strategic plan? Okay, this is information only, so we do not need a motion or a vote, so we can open that up to public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, I would like to make a comment. Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment.
Board moderator, there are no public comment here in Sacramento.
Thank you. Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no public requests for comments there in your location. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you.
Board moderator, can you elevate Suzanne Balkes, please, for the next agenda item? She's on, so you can go ahead and do 5.3. Yeah, just open it up.
BRN moderator, could you also elevate Luke Fitzgerald?
This is Board Member Cormack. While we're waiting, was this information posted in advance? I wasn't able to find it and I don't see it in our packets.
The budget information? That's a good question. It
is on page 9.
On page 9?
Yes, of 5.3 agenda item.
Which is not in our paper packets. And when I checked last night at the meeting minutes, I don't think there was anything for this item.
It is posted. I'm showing it online on page 9, the same as Suzanne is seeing.
When was it posted? Because if I clicked on meeting materials last night about, I don't know, 9:30 p.m. Did anyone else able to access it last night?
Matt is frantically looking because he's the one that was cleaning all this up yesterday.
So there was no 5.0 last night when I checked, and I see other board members nodding that they also were unable to find this material in advance, which means the public also was not able to see it.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Well,
there,
I-
Matt, but
I
they're
see
saying
that
it
it's
wasn't
reflected
posted.
now, but I did not, last night, there was information on 8, 9, and 10, and I see other nods. Yes, you may take that. It's not in there. Okay, it's 5.3 is before 5.2?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. I don't think it was online last night, though, so I will review it quickly while people are coming up. Thank you.
I apologize. I can explain this. 5.2 was posted yesterday, so we posted that separately. So I did do it as a separate tab in your packet. I apologize for that.
Do you want me to go ahead and start or?
Yes,
you want to
please.
wait a minute? Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Suzanne Balkes, and I'm a budget manager with the DCA Budget Office. I want to thank the board and the executive staff for allowing me a few minutes to present on agenda item 5.3 and the document includes. And again, I'm going to be on page 9 of your meeting material, which is going to be the board's fund condition statement. And as a reminder, we read this document top to bottom and then left to right. The left column, which is going to be the board's prior year 22-23 projection based on actuals. It shows the board began 22-23 with an adjusted beginning balance of just over 56 million. The board collected 81.2 million in revenue, with 28 million from initial license fee, 49.6 from license renewal, and 3.6 was collected from issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenues. The board expended just over 60 million, which includes about 5 million in direct draws to the fund for statewide pro rata and pension payments. The board ended 22-23 with just over 77 million monthly reserve balance, or about 15.2 months in reserve. The next column is current year, which is going to be the board's projected revenue with FM6. We have over $79.6 million with revenue, about 24 million projected from initial license fee, 49.5 from renewal fee, and 6.1 from issuance of citations, fines, delinquency fee, and other revenue. The board is projected to expend approximately 60.8 million between authorized expenditure and direct draws to the fund, leaving the board with a fund balance of approximately 31 million or 5.6 months in reserve. 24-25 is based on governor's budget, and 25-26 is based on realized. The budget office will continue to monitor the board's revenue and expenditure and report back to the board with monthly expenditure projection as we close every fiscal year in the current year. A few things to note on the board's fund condition. Well, the fund condition is a snapshot in time. One of the main factors driving expenditure increase in future years is a result of a personal service adjustment. This includes general service increase as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustment. The budget office include a conservative ongoing 3% increase to expenditure on the fund condition statement to account for these ongoing incremental adjustments. The fund balance reserve is the amount of funds remaining at the end of any given fiscal year. The board fund has a statutory fund balance limit of 24 months, but typically 3 to 6 months is considered sufficient. As you can see, the fund balance is healthy and showing growth over the next 2 years. The budget office has no concern. I will continue to monitor the budget and provide update to the board on a regular basis. Again, I want to thank the board member and executive office for allowing me the opportunity to present, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Does the board have any questions? No?
Allison does.
Allison? Board Member Allison Cormack?
Thank you, Chair Trujillo. This is Board Member Cormack. So let me just make sure I understand the current year one. That is actuals plus the projection for the remainder of the year?
Yes. So
Okay.
we have 6 months of actuals right now. Based on that fund condition, we have 6 months of actual, and the remaining 6 months is based on projections.
Okay. And it looks like, and I don't know if there's a question for you or perhaps the BRN staff, there's a significant increase in line, well, other regulatory licenses and permits is going to go from 24 million this year to 31.5 million next year. Any brief explanation of why that is? And then we
Yes.
talked about the loan last time. And then the second question I'll have is this Delta funding provided by general fund and state operations. I don't remember seeing that last time, but if you can explain the change in licenses, revenue, and then the funding provided by the state operations.
I can do that, yes. So this one is going to be the one that we had last time. We had the presentation. It was based on 2023 Budget Act. But after that, the budget got released on January 10th. So now we have the 24-25 governor's budget. So what we do is the reason the revenue is different because we do every year evaluate the revenue based on the board workload and to see how many licensing and the population change. So this is going to be just an estimate of what we are anticipating it might be, but it always can be changed because you will either get higher, more licensing or lower licensing. So it's always a changing point. So, but for now, this is what I evaluated based on the workload revenue. And it is also posted in the governor's budget.
Sorry, can I just stop you on that one? Pardon me for interrupting. Is it that there will be more other licenses and permits, or is it that the prices of the licenses and permits will be up? It's a very big delta.
So typically when we're trying to project that, we're trying to project an increase in licensing or based on a trend that we have been seeing in the past few years. So, and that's how we evaluate that cost. And it looks like if you look at the 22-23, we had the board received about $28 million in other regulatory license and permit. So the expectation of 24-25 when we were doing that workload revenue, it was based on the 22-23 actuals, which is the 28 million. The current year we're projecting about 24 million, but that does not mean it's not going to change because we could receive something in the next 6 months that it will make it actually increase that projection. So the bottom part, which is the current year, it is only based on projection of what we have received so far and what we're anticipating, and we're going to receive almost similar to what we had in the previous 6 months.
And Suzanne, this is Matthew. I clarify for me. It's DCA does it on a 3-year, right? It's a 3-year projection on previous 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah, so what you're saying is COVID. We had a serious increase in endorsement applications during COVID. It's made it very difficult to project a budget because every year since COVID, we've had more and more and more endorsement applications. We're assuming at some point that's going to stop, but because it's a 3-year projection based on the previous 3 years, that's why it's going to be so, it looks like it's going to be so high.
But the 24 is more realistic.
The 24, that, we don't
current
know.
year.
It's a
Don't
6-month projection based on what we've seen so far. Yeah.
Okay, so this is COVID and the fact that it's a 3-year rolling average. Okay, great.
Yeah, so what we saw prior to COVID is we had about 10,000 endorsement RNs on an annual basis. First year of COVID, that doubled to 20,000. Second year of COVID, we saw up to 40,000. The following year, we dipped a little bit under 40,000, but we're still about 38,000 of endorsement applicants coming into California. And so that was something that we did all of our original projecting, we had historically seen about 10,000. And so to see that kind of an increase up to about 40,000 applicants, I mean, that just grossly inflated our revenue, something we never could have predicted. Now, as Matt said, we don't know if that's going to stop. Eventually that will stop. If you look at the nursing numbers throughout the nation, we're 17 to 20% of all nurses are licensed here in California. When you look at that as a sum of many of the states, we're probably a total of about 20 states. Our number reaches that. And so we will run out of nurses coming into California at that rate. So it is not projected to continue, but we just don't know where it will settle at.
Okay.
And so we don't think it'll go back to the 10,000 because other legislative changes where we are expediting license for people that are providing abortive services that they may not be able to provide in other states, gender affirming services here that they may not be able to provide in other states, et cetera, et cetera. So we might see more and more practitioners coming into our state to practice because they are forbidden areas to practice in other states now. And so that might grossly inflate in a temporary kind of format as well. So it's just a lot of unknowns at this particular point.
Okay, well, I'm going to be interested to see next year if we really hit 31. I'm willing to bet no, but okay. Sorry, back to you on the second question, which is about the state operations funding.
And this one might be also the executive officer will elaborate more, but I will tell you that it is due to the SB 104 that it was passed. So it is the public health nurse certification fee waiver program and the backfill revenue related to waiving public health nurse certificate application fee, renewal fee, or both.
Okay, that answers my questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, again, this was information only, so no board motion is needed and no board vote at this point. We will open up to public comment, but before that, after public comment, just to let everybody know, we will be taking a bio break, and then we will set up for agenda item 5.4, where we have people here in-house to present. So board moderator, you can open up to public comment, please.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment.
And board moderator, there are no members present for public comment here in Sacramento.
Thank you. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no public requests for comments there in your location. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. At this
Once again,
time-
thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
At this time, we'll go ahead and commence. We'll take a bio break for 15 minutes.
So that'll be 10:55, board moderator.
Good morning. We will move on to the agenda on item 5.4. Loretta?
Item 5.4 is a presentation, and the people are here and up in Sacramento. Board moderator, can you put the PowerPoint up for this presenter, please? Thank you. And then I will hand this over to Helen and let her introduce herself and the person that is accompanying her today.
Thank you very much. My name is Helen Roth Dowden from Teachers for Healthy Kids, a nonprofit that works in the space between health and education. And we're here today to meet with the board. And I'm going to turn this over to our partners, which is California School Nurses Organization, representing school nurses throughout the state, and to Lisa Musser, a school nurse at Sacramento City Unified School District, who are going to do most of the presentation today. So hopefully our CSNO representative actually works out in the strawberry fields, and she's a working nurse. And so I'm hoping that this is, she's going to be able to log in and give the opening presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dawn Anderson.
Dawn Anderson has been elevated to a panelist and should be able to unmute and start the presentation. Dawn, are you able to do that?
I think she was on earlier, so I'm hoping she's going to be able.
Yeah, it is showing her.
Oh, good.
But it's showing that she's muted and she would have to unmute herself and turn her camera on, but she has the ability to do both. Do we know if she was back right at, oh, there she is. We
Oh,
see her.
great. Okay.
I see her. So if she can come off mute, we'd like to do an audio check, but we do have a visual on you.
There she is. You're still muted. She said she needed I guess it was Neil to unmute her.
There we go.
Oh, good. Okay. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you. Thank you. I apologize. I was here for the whole hour, 2 hours, and we just brought in a head injury. So I'm actually at a school site. So I had to step away, but I'm back.
Okay. Do you want to start off with talking a little about CSNO, and then we'll go on to our the actual project?
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Dawn Anderson. I am a credentialed school nurse. I am also the president for the California School Nurses Organization. This is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that has about 1,800 members. We're close to 1,800 members again, representing credentialed school nurses across California. So I'm very happy, and board, Chair Trujillo and the board, thank you for having us today. I've been a registered nurse for 30 years. I've also been a credentialed school nurse working in the schools for 21 years. I have my bachelor's in science, my master's in administration. I have a public health nurse credential, and through the California Commission on Teaching credential, I have a credential in school nursing as well as an administrative credential. And like many areas in the field of nursing, school nursing has long experienced a nursing shortage, with many districts having difficulty even hiring or retaining school nurses. Today's presentation is about a creative and innovative solution, an approach that addresses these issues. I know we'll be discussing about credentialed school nursing and the programs and how to support that. I did want to give a brief overview for the board on just the pathway for a credentialed school nurse. You have to, as a registered nurse, you have to have a bachelor's either in science of nursing or a bachelor's in a related field. You have to be hired by a school district, and then you apply for a preliminary credential, which is good for the first 5 years. Within those 5 years, you need to apply to a credentialing program. Currently, we have I believe about 5 colleges that offer it, as well as LA Unified School District has also been approved to provide credentialing through their district and for their staff. Recruitment and retention is difficult. The cost of a credentialed school nurse program is based on units, and many programs, depending on the requirements, require 16 to 24 postgraduate units. Many of our school nurses leave within the first 5 years, either due to the cost of the credential or the increased workload and stability of the position due to the shortage. For example, if a nurse retires mid-year or takes another position, that position usually does not get rehired, requiring the existing school nurses to possibly double or triple their caseloads. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our other presenters. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. And next slide. You can go to the next slide.
Board moderator, are you able to advance this slide?
Right. Okay. So just a little bit of background, just briefly. I don't want to read the slide, but just to let you know, look, we got some grant funding through the County Office of Education in Sacramento County, and to ask nurses, we asked faculty and we asked staff, people who worked in the schools, how come so little money was coming back to the schools for health services, even though the schools were providing so much health services to kids, particularly during when people came back from COVID and around the COVID time. And we found out it's because we don't have nurses. And in any field of medicine, you have to have sign off on orders under a doctor's order. And if you don't have nurses, they can't sign off on services. Therefore, you can't have health aides all the way down. So we decided to apply for a grant through the labor agency, HRTP grant, and we're awarded about $1 million. And Lisa's going to talk about the specifics of that. We put together a group that helped to write the grant. Our great partners were the education partners at CSUS, School of Nursing. And through this grant, which we're going to describe today, we put all these folks into an apprenticeship committee structure. And apprenticeship is something, and I've worked, I got my degree at Berkeley in public health, and my thesis was on nurses and training nurses. And one of the ideas was to look at models that were for doctors, et cetera, and to see if you could apply it. When you talk about apprenticeships, most people think of the lunch bucket crowd, a carpenter, a plumber, but really a doctor is an apprentice too, and it should also be what a model for nurses. So what this program did, it took working nurses and allowed them to, while they're working, which is what you do to get the school credential, to get their credential and then to get the job with the district. I had previous experience on doing an LVN to RN program with the state system, Department of Corrections, where we took LVNs and turned them into RNs by having them work within the facilities and then go on and take positions as RNs. So this is a replication of the model, and that's what Lisa's going to describe today. Next slide.
So I think Dawn did a good job of, my name's Lisa Musser, sorry, I'm the health services coordinator. Sorry about that. Hi, that's better. My name's Lisa Musser, and I'm the health services coordinator at Sac City Unified School District, and that's over the school nurses and health aides that work in basically South Sacramento. And if you're from this area, you kind of know that that district is quite diverse. And we have this problem that Dawn was talking about. And so when Helen approached our district with this idea of applying for this grant, I thought it was a great idea, and we jumped right in, and we needed to get, so along with Helen, Teachers for Healthy Kids, and we reached out to the other school districts because we needed to have other district partners thinking about a bigger grant, $1 million that would be able to help fund school nurses, which I'll talk about what they funded. We reached out to the school districts and also, of course, to Sac State to work on how could we make this work. 5 districts signed on originally, and let's see, signed on. And so what most of us say is that the problem with school nurses is one, recruitment, because they don't know about school nursing. And what they do know is that they make half the amount of money that they can make in their alternative professions at hospitals. But there's a lot of benefits of school nursing. It's a community health oriented position, work fewer hours, impact families in really different ways. But we had about a 50% vacancy rate in our district, and that was mirrored across the county. And of course, you know, we serve a quite diverse and needy population, right? And we need school nurses. The other problem, once we got the nurses, was retention, of course, because of the credential program. It's quite expensive. It's about $11,500 in our district just for the credentialing, and it's a year-long program. So we hire nurses, they make half as much as they can in the hospital, and then we tell them they have to go back to school and get another year's worth credential that's going to cost them extra money. And so typically they work for 3 or 4 years, and then many of them quit and they go on to do something else. So with this grant, this money, we use the funds to pay for that credential program and also to fund preceptors to provide them with some really good mentorship. Because as you can imagine, if you're understaffed, you don't have good mentorship and preceptoring in the school district. The nurses work alone in 1 to 6, 7, 10 schools, depending on your district. And so it can also be very difficult and challenging and scary to be out there on your own, the only health person in the school district or school. So this helped also encourage preceptors that might also precept from other districts that have better staffing.
Next slide.
Let me see here.
We kind of covered some of this, I think.
Yeah. So that was the model that we worked on, and we worked on the grant and presented it, and it was accepted and funded for $9 million. And then we went for $10 million. Then we went on to recruit nurses by reaching out to districts in Sacramento County. So we stuck with Sacramento County, and there are 15 districts in Sacramento County. And at this point, we've got about 13 districts now signed on. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, next slide.
Yeah. So we had to engage the districts too and talk them into, you know, school districts are quite bureaucratic organizations. There's a lot of regulation and requirements, and for them to sign on to new programs, it can be challenging. But we were able to demonstrate that the program would benefit them immensely by helping them hire and retain their school nurses. And so now we've got about 13 districts that have signed on with their first cohort of school nurses being about 9 school nurses went through the first year, and now we have 23 nurses in our second cohort, and we're hoping to expand the program to reach our maximum or more of 50 nurses by the 3rd year.
Next slide.
Of course, Sac State was an important collaborator too. We worked with them to develop the program and protocols. I want to also mention that we did work with the federal and California Departments of Labor to get the program established as an apprenticeship program, looking forward to trying to fund this program with other grant funding. And so they were a partner as well. I didn't mention. Next slide. Next slide. Of course, we engaged school nurses too. That was initially in talking about what are the things that would encourage you to stay in your job as a school nurse, and the program, the requirements of the program financially was one of the big problems. Next slide. In addition to that, I mentioned the incentives for the preceptors. So the preceptors will get a $1,500 stipend in order to support that school nurse through the program. And also the nurse participant will get $500 for supplies, et cetera. So a total amount that they will get is about $12,000. Next slide.
And this is talking about recruiting. And I wanted to just pull out of some of the general things that we did. We learned an interesting trick from Mendocino County that we'll talk about later, where they used your BRN list and Lisa wrote up a letter just for the zip codes within Sac City Unified and sent it out to your BRN list with a letter, which we'll have a slide later with what is on it. And I brought a copy of it saying, would you be interested in working as a school nurse? Here's all the way you can do it. And gee, you get your summers off if you have kids, you work less hours. And she will talk about how many responses. And we got this because they did this in Mendocino County and they got a huge response and they were able to recruit nurses using your list. We also reached out to the Department of Rehabilitation, and it's been a really long slog with them. But they do have this program, which it's amazing the amount of money that's available, where you could take nurses who've been injured on the job and you could help them retrain. Some of them, they may be RNs, and it would help them get a BS degree or a BA degree, so they would be eligible for the school nurse, and then it would pay for the credential. And we talked to EDD, Employment Development, to try and get a hold of these lists. And, you know, it's confidential who's receiving benefits for disability. But we're hopeful, and one of the things we wanted to do today is to talk to you about how you could work with your sister department and see whether or not you could get the list of those injured nurses. And, you know, we understand that a lot of nurses are out of the field, and this is a way of recruiting them back in. And we've actually seen there's one nurse that's just been hired who's going through the program now, who is about, you know, over 40. The back problem happened. You know, they just cannot lift patients. And so this is just a perfect solution for them. And so I think a lot of nurses, and you see that there are a lot of your nurses who have licenses that aren't practicing. Can we get to those nurses who've been injured and bring them into the field? And we're hoping that you might help us, because as a private agency, we don't have access to that information. If you could exchange that with the Department of Rehabilitation and use it with this program that they have, which is called, let's see, it's a disability program. It's called PSP, and it's for high quality careers, which this qualifies. And it will pay for all kinds of things for those nurses to return to nursing. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to come here today to talk about that as the recruitment strategy we would like to work with you about. And I'll turn it back over to Lisa.
Yeah, we looked at different pathways
We
for
have
getting.
another slide.
Oh, next slide. Well, just still on this side, we did look at various pathways into becoming a school nurse, we also in the grant will fund ADN to BSN to school nurse pathways, as well as LVN to BSN to LVN to nurse pathways. We've had difficulty with that just because of the bureaucracy of the different educational systems. And so the most successful has been school nurses that are hired as school nurses already with their registered nurse license, and then supporting them and getting their credential. Next slide.
So we would love to do the LVN to RN all the way up, but it's been really, really difficult to get those programs involved.
We're looking at evaluating the model now. I want to say one way we evaluated it is we had a Christmas, a graduation party at the end of our first cohort, and 8 of the 9 nurses came with their families and shared with them how important the program was to them. Many of them shared that they didn't think they would continue if they hadn't had the benefit of the program to fund it, that extra $12,000. And the support that they received just being part of this cohort. So part of the evaluation will be looking at responses from school nurses that they go through, and also how much we are able to retain school nurses, and the equity measures that we're looking at. One of the recruiting that we did using your list is we identified nurses that lived in the zip codes where our schools are located, and we outreach specifically to them, and we got a huge response. And so we were able to, well, we went from a district of 17 school nurses and 18 vacancies to hiring now over the last 2 years, 29 new school nurses. We lost a couple for retirements, a couple moved, and a couple didn't work out as usual, but now we have 42 school nurses. Some of those are part-time. I think it was a number of things. One is COVID. I think a lot of nurses wanted to leave the hospital after COVID, and getting this letter in the mail was an option. So I got many phone calls, over 100 phone calls, and then many applications. And so we have not been fully staffed as a school district for 20 years since we had these mass layoffs. So it's super exciting to us, but we need to keep them as well. And so with this program, it's a 3-year program. We encouraged all those new nurses, and we had about 6 that still hadn't, of that 17 that still doesn't have their credential. So of course we encourage them, sign on, apply now, get in. And the thing about the program is once you get a credential, just like any education, you become professionalized in that program. You become a part of a bigger community of school nurses. You understand what your role is. You understand the big picture of public health and community health and why you're doing what you're doing. And so once that happens, they feel more confident and happier, and they tend to stay. And so we really feel like getting them educated with their credential early in their career, before the 5 years comes up, is going to enable us to keep these nurses. And we've had a lot of really positive feedback from the nurses. And so very hopeful. And I guess the other part of the evaluation is, can we keep this going? It's only 3 years, so we need to get another funding source. And so we had applied, CSNO applied for a grant to the same system. Helen worked with them, that was not funded. So part of that is the apprenticeship model. Hopefully that will help with that, but identifying more funding sources is also key.
Yeah, this program, we now have a school nurses, a credentialed school, are registered apprenticeships with the federal government, the Department of Labor. And we're just finishing up the process of them being registered apprentices within the state labor agency, the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, which both your executive director and we both serve on IACA, which is basically trying to figure out how to do this. But we're now applying for a federal grant due the middle of April. We're hoping to apply for it because we now have registered apprentices. We also require the nurses to stay 2 years who've gone through this program so that they just don't get the education and leave, but they stay. So this creates a lot more stability than we've seen. And that's one reason the employers really like it. So we'll go to the next slide, which I've already discussed a little bit. This is the funding slide. You can go on to the next slide. And this is a copy of the letter. We'll make this available. And you can see there's, at the bottom, there's EdSource. I think this is the employing agency where people can go and see jobs that are online. And that's the one that Sac City sent out. And then the next slide. Okay, and I'm going to go back to Dawn, and she's going to talk again about why some of the recruiting ideas that we've been using, the messages that we found that were important for school nurses.
Thank you. We know that, the credentialed school nurse is a community school nurse leader. I went on EdJoin this morning and there's 140 credentialed school nurse positions open in the state of California. And as Helen had mentioned, we did not get this last funding opportunity that would have expanded. This program that is being mentioned was only being run up in the Sacramento area. And the funding opportunity that we were looking at was to really expand it across our state so that other areas, such as myself, I'm in Ventura County, would have the opportunity to be able to not only hire, but recruit and retain some of these school nurses. We know that the school is the central hub in every community, and we have the ability to effectively ensure equitable access to health resources. We identify needs of our community, which sometimes are gaps in services. And we also work extremely close with our community agencies to make sure that we can fill those gaps and meet those needs. Many times the health office becomes the primary care provider for many of our students. We have many students this year that are currently entering our state school system for the first time, and requires someone with the knowledge and ability to access. You know, we don't have a lot of social workers, our counselors are very busy, but we also don't have the access to the credentialed school nurses in some of our districts that would really be able to assist these students, you know, to hook them up with, you know, the resources, Medi-Cal applications, any of the things that the credentialed school nurse normally does on a daily basis. As I mentioned, when I came in, I'm out of school. I'm actually fortunate to be a working credentialed school nurse, and I work at a high school that has 2,600 students. I have over 40 students that have IEPs. I have over 60 students that have active emergency plans, students with diabetes, kidney dialysis, oncology students. So many students here requiring a high level of expertise in nursing, not only for the emergencies, but also for the chronic case management that's required and training of school personnel. So while the school nurse, you know, is sometimes considered, you know, working on a day-to-day basis, you know, it almost becomes a little medical center. I see over 50 students a day, or my health technician does it within our health office. So extremely busy school sites that require a lot of expertise. So the credential is, and the education is extremely necessary, and having that opportunity to be able to fund school nurses and to expand that program is essential for us to continue to provide services in our schools.
And I wanted to add on to her comment, because one of the problems is we wanted to go to HCI to ask for funding because they have funding for nurses. However, school nurses are not eligible. If you take and bring down the list for eligibility for their scholarships or any of their funding requirements, because they're not licensed through the board of the BRN. Instead, the credential is given through the California Teacher Credentialing Commission. So because of that, we're actually stopped from applying. And I think how much money is it? 140 million, 120 million of new nursing money is going to be available through HCI. And we're hoping that we can work with you to see whether or not there's a way we can make arrangement so that we would be eligible to draw down on those funds. Because I was really heartbroken this year when the HRTP grant didn't go through, because there were about 15, 20 nurses from around the state calling, please, I can't afford to do this. I don't want to lose my job. Please try and help me. But when we went to HCI, they couldn't help because the money was not available because that credential isn't through you. So if there's a way we can work on a policy change on that, we have met with HCI. They are looking at nursing shortages and including us in the data that they're looking at, but we're not included in terms of funding, because when you go to apply, it doesn't say school nurse on the drop-down menu. So if you could help with that, that would be a huge, really, just an enormous help for these efforts in California. Once the nurses are employed, they're able to bill for Medi-Cal. So the way that this program is sustainable is the school billing programs. And now what the governor has done, he's allowing school nurses are going to be able to bill private insurance. So you can bill under the individual education plan, which is special education students. You've been now be able, because of a change in the state plan in October of 2020, you can now bill for all Medi-Cal students. And as of the governor's new program, in fact, it starts next month, you'll be on behavioral health side, but eventually you're probably going to be able to bill private insurance. So therefore you will have a funding source for all of these students in the schools, but we can't get there unless we can educate these people. And that's one of the reasons that we came before you today to help us with this. So with that, that's my closing comment. I'll turn it over to Lisa and then Don for the final word on this. Thank you.
Yeah, you can go ahead and forward to the next two slides. I'll just, my closing statement is just kind of a comment. It's just a plug for school nurses in general. We're the nurses that are working out there in the community. There are 9,500 schools in our state and about 2,500 school nurses. That's reaching 5.5 million school children and their families. So when you put efforts into schools, it's an amazing public health venue. You can really impact families and communities. And so I really hope that we can maintain, the progress of funding school nurses and looking at different efforts because it makes a huge impact on our families. Thanks for hearing us.
And you're probably looking at the slide and thinking, what is that? That's your form that we use to get the names from the BRN of who's eligible. And so that's your website that we just went in and we were able to order these lists. So it's very hard to understand, but that's what you actually put up. And with that, Dawn, you want to finish this off?
Yes, I do want to extend a heartfelt gratitude to the BRN board for supporting credentialed school nurses. I know there was legislation that was presented last year that really would have harmed the professionalism of the credentialed school nurse in terms of education and access and ability to serve our students. And the board was very gracious and was very supportive of those efforts. And I know our continued partnership and participation in life meetings to really help, just the little reminder of don't forget that there's credentialed school nurses also. While it's a small field within the school nursing, it actually has a very huge impact in terms of public health and community nursing, where we have an outreach of, for myself, 2,600 students times 2. If they have 2 adults, I'm reaching, over 6,000 or 7,000, 8,000 individuals on a weekly basis, annual basis, that I have their attention. So, just remembering that the credentialed school nurse, and the more that we can promote activities and funding that also include the credentialed school nurse in these opportunities, even what was it? The reimbursement. So, tuition reimbursement. The HCI has something out there right now, and currently credentialed school nurses are not eligible based on their criteria. However, we do serve, or many of us do serve, in very low income areas. And so we do meet that eligibility requirement. However, the area of school nursing, credentialed school nurses, is not an option for us to be able to apply for tuition reimbursement either. So for continuing education in our fields. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for letting us come here to present. We look forward to partnering again.
Thank you for your report. I just have one question. The nurses that are going through the credentialing program right now, how are they funding this? How are they funding this credentialing program for them?
So
Ourselves.
typically, before this grant program,
Mhm.
out of their pocket, they pay for it themselves.
Okay.
And one of the
Yeah.
one of the problems, and one of the things that we found with this, that about 80% of school nurses are white. And in our first cohort, 60% of them are minorities, and they speak the languages that the students speak. And one of the problems, because you have to be fairly wealthy to be able to afford $11,400, for a program. And these are run through, there's 4 CSU that have these programs. They were before they had like 60 people for a program where there were 100 slots, because people just couldn't afford to go into this. So now this program they actually had more applications than they had slots for the first time. So that's the other thing, is we're able to help to subsidize. Ongoing, what we're hoping, once we get these started, that the school districts might be able to help, because the change in the Medi-Cal reimbursement models. But we have to get the nurses before it's the chicken and the egg. So that's why we really need your support, particularly now.
Thank you.
And for school nurses that are not in Sacramento, they pay out of their pocket, or they get student loans.
Thank you. Board Member Patricia Nguyen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, ladies, for this really exciting presentation. It's really great to see the work you're doing. And I do hope that if there is some role that the BRN can take to support a program like this, whether it's legislatively or, a letter of support to some program in terms of grants, I hope that we would optimize that. Thank you.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what role the board could have, but we'll definitely look to see what can be done and reach out. And it might just be as simple as contacting HCI and saying, why is school nurse not on the drop down?
Yes.
And that just might be an email that we can see about doing. A couple of the things I did want to clarify. I know that you said that was our website. It's actually DCA's website.
Oh.
So I just want to give them credit. DCA holds a listing of all their boards and bureaus and contacts and stuff on that. So that is available to anybody. You can export it to Excel document and sort by zip code, which I'm sure that's what you guys did. And that's an excellent resource. One of the other things for you guys to think about is to reach out and contact the National Organization of Nurses with Disabilities. They might be able to tie you with nurses that might look at this and say that this is an amazing opportunity. We don't have the ability to get a confidential list, although that would be of benefit, I'm sure, but that's not something that we have the ability to do. So I want to do that. But one of the other things that we're really pushing for is working within our academic institutions that we oversee, the pre-licensure nursing programs. When people enter into those programs, they're thinking, I want to be a nurse, and they immediately put that to a hospital setting. And so we're really encouraging them to look out into the community settings. And with the shortage of pediatric clinical placements, we're like, hey, why are you guys not looking at school districts and getting assigned to a school nurse? And more schools are picking up on that, and they're assigning their students to do clinical rotations as part of their direct patient care requirement during their pre-licensure program as a school nurse. And because of that, they're now aware that this is an opportunity, and hopefully we'll see more people pursue that.
That's a great idea.
We do get a lot. That's where we get several of our current nurses were students, and they ran through a clinical in the schools and learned about it. And then they typically go work in the hospital first and then wait until they can afford to take a pay cut to come back to school nursing. So that's the other issue.
I'll leave the leaflet that we design that we give to the community colleges and to the nursing programs to recruit. And so we have received some response to this, telling people when they graduate and they want to go on to school nursing, that there is funding available. So I'll leave this.
Thank you. I could share that out with our academic institutions as well.
Okay, and I'll email it to you also.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes.
Board Member Patel, I have a question for the panel here. First of all, I would like to say it's commendable that you've identified this source of need for our communities, and I appreciate you all taking the time to do so. I have two questions, one regarding the curriculum, if you could speak a little bit about that. I'm sure all of us remember seeing a school nurse. I don't know if there are RNs at the time for cuts and bruises and things like that, but just hearing Dawn speak about the level of acuity she sees, and it's astounding, what she's dealing with on a daily and the number of students that she sees. Can you speak to the curriculum of, the psychiatric mental health sort of situations, self-harm things, as well as how to treat, these pediatric patients?
Maybe I'll take a start and then Dawn can finish. Yeah, school nurses don't put on any Band-Aids. Let me just or not very many, right? You have a health tech or a health aide that might be doing that, or the office manager in our district. We are we're the health professional of the school. We're case managers and health services managers. And so we do a lot of case finding and support and advocacy for students that have health problems, disabilities, that need some accommodation at school in order for them to attend school or to be able to access the curriculum. So we're doing 504 meetings, which is disability rights and accommodation rights, IEPs, special education assessments, and advocacy, setting up services, medical services that students need in order to attend school, G-tubes, catheters, diabetes, medications, and other accommodations that they might need just to be able to attend school comfortably. Anything to add to that?
No, that's great to know. Thank you. And the other question I had, especially with Dawn seeing how many students that she sees, has your panel, or have you identified what is the appropriate number of students that per school nurse, for instance? I know she spoke to having maybe 1 or 2 or 3 even in her group. That would be ideal, but have you identified like the best number of students per nurse?
Dawn, you want to speak to that one?
Yes, in the past, it had been recognized by the National Association of School Nurses, and you can still find this reference at places, but it was 1 to 1,500 students. However, that number, and when you look closer, it's really based on acuity. So a lot of areas don't go by that. I know in California, most districts have never made a 1 to 1,500 student acuity. There are some states in our country that have 1 nurse at every school site. I'm actually the only school district in Ventura County that puts a nurse at each school site. However, you know, you had heard I have a very large school site. So we 1 to 1,500, but was the recommendation for many years. However, it is really based on acuity. For example, you know, I'm at a school that has a high special ed acuity. So this year I'll probably have at the end of the year finished over 200 individual education plan health assessments. And those are for triennials or initials. We probably have about 50 students that are being recognized or identified for our special ed programs that need health assessments, in addition to what was previously said about our 504s. And we also have SST meetings. You know, I think you had touched on, you know, mental health. We do see a surprisingly increasing number of students. Yesterday, I had 2 students that I had to go out on campus that were having anxiety attacks, and was with them individually each probably for about 45 minutes to an hour. So my 6-hour day really isn't a 6-hour day, but we do see an increasingly large number. And a lot of people have said because of COVID, and we do see the lack of social emotional adjustment since COVID. However, I know in our county, we were actually seeing a larger number prior to COVID of students that were going on home hospital due to school anxiety. So in our area, we had prior to COVID been seeing an increased number of students that physicians were signing for them to be on home hospital. So we do have a large number of students on home hospital, primarily because of mental health conditions or issues that the school nurse also provides information and works with the families closely.
I was just going to add about the numbers because our district just has recently been looking into the ratio for school nurses, and the National Association for School Nurses, maybe, I can't remember the year, 80s, said 1 nurse to every 750, and then they revised that in 2015 to be dependent on acuity, like Dawn said. So with a recommendation of 1 to 250, if that includes students with special education, some schools may need 2 nurses or more, depending on their population needs. So we need a lot more nurses. Most school districts do not have a school nurse in every school. Some districts have 1 nurse in the entire district, and that's the case in our county as well. And so, of course, the work they do varies tremendously depending on the funding, right? So they might just be doing very little, doing administrative work if you're 1 nurse in a district versus Dawn sitting in a school office can actually interact with students and families and provide really intensive and important services.
And let me say one more thing about this project, which was one of the things we learned. We found there are lots of little school districts like Roebla, where 80% of the kids are on, 100% of the kids are on free and reduced price, and 80% are on Medi-Cal, for example. But they didn't have a school nurse because they didn't have a mentor. They need to have a nurse to mentor a school nurse. But because we were paying these $1,500 preceptorships, we were able to get a nurse in a bigger district that didn't have such a big caseload to mentor a nurse who they'd never had a full-time nurse to come and work. So now we have a nurse working in the school district because through this project, we were able to pay the $1,500 for the mentor for this nurse. So at the end of this project, these little school districts are now, and I think there are 3 or 4 of them, are now going to have their own nurse for the first time ever. And there are all these little rural farm districts where there's not a lot of other healthcare in those communities. I'm going to leave also a copy of the apprenticeship standards, which actually all the education curriculum is written by CSU in this. We don't do that. They are over education. They write the curriculum and the students must meet them. Also a copy of the rules and regulations, which both the employer signs and the student signs, which sets up what's required in the program. It's all in writing. If there's a problem, they have open to you union representation to solve it. There's an apprenticeship committee that meets and talks about these. So that's why it's a lot more collaborative than most of the training programs that you're going to see, because they do have representative. They do, a student sits on the committee that oversees this program.
Yeah, Lisa, thank you for the correction. I did want to just add, in California, it does not require districts to have hired or employ a credentialed school nurse. So unfortunately, we know there's probably around maybe 50% of our districts that do not have a credentialed school nurse, or nor are they required to hire one. So I know that would be ideal, if we had a ratio. So we have these small school districts that maybe can't afford to hire a credentialed school nurse full-time, but that if there was a requirement for schools, there's requirements for schools to provide care, health assessments, and also mandated vision and hearing screening. So I'm not sure how they're doing. A lot of them will do contract services. However, usually it's not through with a contracted credentialed school nurse. So, having that as an option for schools in California, because we know that school attendance improves, school health improves, we're able to provide access, or even provide, like we're going to provide a community mobile clinic at our site. So for students that can't access it out, or have transportation to their site. So it would be great if schools were required in California, like in other states, to have a credentialed school nurse. So
Thank you. Board Member David Lawler.
Thank you. I have a different comment I originally was going to make, but to reinforce the issue with the numbers, I am a school teacher. Kern County is one of the largest high school districts in the state. And she said she had 50 students at the time. We have over 300 that our school nurse directly has to work with and perform treatments on. And these are things that I thought only happened in the hospital. Now, we have 2,400 students on our campus, so 300 is really not that much in that perspective. But we're blessed to have an actual school nurse. My original comment, though, is that the profile that you're looking for, someone who isn't necessarily in their 20s or 30s and can do a 12-hour, 20-hour shift and can make a ton of money, might have left because of COVID and burnout, might be at an age where they're ready to settle down a little and still get job security or retirement, much less hours in their schedule. And so my suggestion / comment is I didn't hear any talk about the association and reaching out for recruitment purposes through them, but is it possible, because they're still members, that the CNA could put the word out for you to all its membership, and they know who they know, and by 3 degrees of separation, get who you need to get?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't really talk about the benefits of school nursing, but of course they're huge. Once we have a school nurse and they get their credential, they are a school nurse forever, because it is a wonderful job, and there's lots of benefits. And that letter that is in there, it's a sales pitch for being a school nurse. We work with families and children in the community. It's preventive care. It's generally, not working with sick children. So, and it's got a retirement and good benefits, and you have summers off. But that's a good idea to work with CNA as well.
One last thing. What the BRN might be able to do is support legislation in this respect, because without a mandate in Ed Code, one of the first places cut during a budget shortfall are these wraparound services, mental health, language pathologists, drug interventionists. And they can,
Mhm.
school nurses. So you said the ratio of 1 in 1,500, 1 in 750. I got 1 in 2,500 and I'm lucky. So without a mandate, once the money goes away, that's one of the more vulnerable areas to be addressed.
Yes, I did. I'm with California School Nurse Organization representing them. So I do receive all the questions that come across the state, and nurses have been already notified this school year because of the budget projections that are happening, that they have been given notice. So there is a reduction in some of our districts already on credentialed school nurses, meaning, there was a need for them. There is still a need for them. The need did not go away. However, their position is going to be going away. So looking at legislation, I appreciate that offer. As we continue to do that at CSNO, we are a state organization. I'm on the state board, but we also have regions. So we have our tri-counties, our Central Coast region, where each region, we have 6 regions across our state, and each region does local outreach and also provides local conferences. So I know in our region, we did we did some kind of medical skills, and we reached out to our colleges locally to try to do recruitment, because I know in our area we've had a difficult time in recruitment and retention of our school nurses. So each region reaches out locally to their area to do recruitment also.
Any other questions or comments from the board members? No? Vera and moderator, we can open it up for public comment, please.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give reminders as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
BRN moderator, we do not have public comment in Sacramento.
Thank you. Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no public requests for comments in your location. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
for that enlightening presentation. That was eye-opening. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is 6.0, BRN Future Priorities and Proposals for Review and Possible Action. 6.1 is information only. Update on regular rulemaking package to modify California Code of Regulations, CCR Title 16, Section 1452, regarding continuing education requirement exemptions, and Section 1426, regarding required curriculum.
So this is just a very quick update, Board President. So both 1426 and 1452 came as packages in front of our board. It moved through, it went out to comment, it came back to comment, and from comment period. And we're used to having to come back in front of the board and answer a bunch of comments. We received 0 comments and no requests for hearings. So this is just a simple update saying that it is moved on to Office of Administrative Law. Yes.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you, Loretta. Moving on to 7.0, Report of the Nursing Practice Committee.
We need to do public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Vera and moderator, can you please open up for public comment on item 6.1?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment. Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. I'm seeing there are no public requests for comments in your location. Would I be able to close this window?
Yes, thank you. All right, moving on to item 7.0. This is a report of the Nursing Practice Committee.
The items for the Nursing Practice Committee are information only, and Lori, I think you have the information.
Thank you. So 7.1.1 through 7.1.5 will be quick updates. NPAC, NMAC, and NEWAC have not met in between the last board meeting and this board meeting, but we did have successful first meetings for the Clinical Nurse Specialist Advisory Committee, as well as the Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist Advisory Committee. They were both provided training meetings on the same day, questions and answers. They were able to vote on the charter and pick a chair and a vice chair and form subcommittees. We have actually even met with some of the subcommittees and got them up and running so that they can start doing the work in between the meeting timeline and report out at the meeting. So very, very successful first meetings for both the CRNAs and the CNS's advisory groups. Any
Thank you,
questions?
Lori. Any questions or comments from the board members? No?
We can go to public comment.
Yeah. Thank you. BRN moderator, can we please go out to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box. I would like to make a comment. Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment. Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no public requests for comments in your location. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. Okay, item 7.2, this is information only. Update on implementation of Business and Professions Code, Section 2811.1, Retired License and California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 1410.5, Coursework exemptions for out-of-state applicants.
Thank you. So we just wanted to give a quick update on some licensing changes that have been implemented over the last few months. So the first one came about through a passing of a bill that is now in legislation. And so the BRN is now able to issue a retired license. This has been a long time coming. I know that I've fielded many calls as well as some of the other executive staff on whether or not a nurse can go into a retired status. And up until this point, they were not able to. So they would either go inactive, which they had a hard time letting that happen because you tie your identity very, very closely to that RN license. And so now they have an option where they can go into their Breeze account. They can request to be a retired nurse. It does become effective immediately. And that is a word that we need to get out. Some people believe like my license expires
did until I renewed it, expires end of March. And so if I wanted to be retired, I went in January and I clicked I wanted to be retired, it would retire me January. It doesn't retire me when my license expires. And so that has caused quite a bit of confusion where people wake up the next morning and go, oh no, please put me back active. I didn't mean to do that. So we're working through some kind of process opportunities around that, and really just getting that work out that when you do submit that button, you are retired. One of the other things is you can only retire twice. So if you retire your license, you can come back active. But if you retire that second time, you are not able to come back active. That was some safeguarding that was put into place for people that may want to kind of license hop or do something to that. So that was in there. And so far, pretty good feedback. Not a lot of people are aware of this yet as we work out the kinks. But we're working through this and it seems to be well received for the people that are wanting to actually go into a retired status. There is no fee attached to this one at this point. So they are able to go into a retired status without having to pay anything. They would, if they decide to come out of a retired status and go back into an active status, they would have to pay that fee to get an active license again. Any questions on the retired status before I move on to the update for 1410.5? No? Okay, 1410. Yes.
This is Jovita. Just quick question. If you choose to be retired licensed, could you still volunteer?
Yes, you can. And so that is, you can provide volunteer services. You cannot practice nursing. Okay. So if you were to assist in like a vaccination clinic, you have the competency to do that. You can go in there as a retired RN. And if you have an RN that is supervising you, you could work very much as a very similar to like an IP RN, an interim permit RN, almost identical scope of practice where you have that competency, you're able to perform those services, but you cannot do that without a licensed RN with you. You're welcome. And it does have to be volunteer. It cannot be a paid position. Okay, 1410.5 was a regulatory update that that the board put forward to allow for some of our out-of-state nurses to transition in and get licensed in California. What we had discovered previously was a huge barrier with the laboratory part of your microbiology with lab or your anatomy physiology with lab. And so it went in front of the board. We did a regulatory package and that actually went into effect. And we are seeing people utilize this exemption to come in from out of state, show that they have been licensed and practicing with at least 2 years without any issues. And they're able to go ahead and get licensed in California without having to retake a laboratory section of a microbiology or a laboratory section of anatomy and physiology. This was a real hindrance for people that were advanced practitioners who had been finished with their pre-licensure nursing program for 20 plus years. They have a doctorate in nursing practice. They're independent practitioners, a nurse practitioner in another state. And then they come to California and we say, we can't license you even as an RN because you didn't have a lab component of your micro or A&P. So this is a huge barrier that's been removed and it is up and functional and people are utilizing it. Any questions? Thank you. This is information only, so we can open up to public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for a comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, I would like to make a comment. Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment.
Board moderator, excuse me. There are no people present for public comment in Sacramento.
Thank you. Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no public requests for comments there in Sacramento. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 8.0, 7.3, I'm sorry. This is also information only. Overview of scope of practice of clinical nurse specialists. Lori?
Thank you. So this is part of a series. We have 4 board meetings typically scheduled each year, and we have 4 advanced practice registered nursing specialties. We have the certified registered nurse anesthetist, the nurse practitioner, the nurse midwife, and the clinical nurse specialist. So we have opted to highlight one APRN group at each board meeting as just information only so that we can make sure our board members as well as our stakeholders are informed. We do have the formation of the Clinical Nurse Specialist Advisory Group as well as the Clinical Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist Advisory Group, who are both planning to introduce regulation because those are 2 areas of our Nurse Practice Act that they don't have any regulatory authority other than what is set forth in statute. And so in order to have some informed board members as well as informed stakeholders to facilitate a public comment period or request for hearing, we felt that it was a good idea to bring this information forward. So the first one that is being covered is the clinical nurse specialist. This is a advanced practice RN role. It is covered in our statute. It starts at Business Professions Code 2838, and it's a very small section. It only goes to 2838.4. So not a lot of structure there. But what I do want to do is do some screen share so that you guys can see really where there is some robust information. And so I'm going to pull that up here and steal your slide, board moderator. Make sure this shows. Wonderful. So the first thing that you can access right now is the National Association for Clinical Nurse Specialists, and it covers what is a CNS. And it does state that they are an advanced practice RN with a master's, doctoral, or postgraduate certificate level for CNS. And what a lot of people don't understand is that they do diagnose, they do prescribe, and they do treat patients and specialty populations across the continuum of care. And so what is also commonly misunderstood is that a lot of these nurses take the same content that your nurse practitioner and your nurse midwife take with your the basic core curriculum, and then they specialize out. What is offered right now within the CNS groups are your neonatal CNS, your pediatric, I'm sorry, let me pull that up here real quick. I'm so sorry here. There are a small amount, and I'm totally blanking right now. So if anyone wants to come and help out, thank you. There are 3. What was that? No, that's not a national certified. No, so it's not. So that's the thing, is it just changed. And of course, I had it in my mind at the tip of my tongue, and it's not there now when I need it. So here we go. So there were a multitude of clinical nurse specialists, and here we are. Thank you. And what happened is clinical nurse specialists used to be partnered with national organizations, and then they split. And then they went solo and they became this on their own. And with that, they lost a lot of national certifying bodies. And so with NCSBN and their recognition of licensure and looking at the APRN consensus model, they recommend licensure only in the population focus. And so instead of with nurse practitioners who have 8 areas of population focus, nurse midwives has, 1 population focus, the clinical nurse specialist dropped down from what they typically had down to only 3. And so you do have adult geri, you do have pediatrics, and you have neonatal. And so right now, those are the only 3 national certifications that can be obtained from an academic institution graduating out. Now, California, we have an option to be licensed without a national certification. But because our board back in 2008 said we were going to adopt the APRN consensus model, we only newly license these 3 population focus. The other thing that's part of that APRN consensus model says that no regulatory body can have authority over some of the subspecialties. So we can only license at a population focus, which is your adult geri, your pediatrics, and your neonatal. Now, do we have other CNSs that have other specialties, like your psychiatric mental health CNS? Yes, they exist and they are grandfathered in. And so if they have what we have been very familiar with going through the implementation of AB 890 and our nurse practitioners, is there are legacy or retired national certifications. And so it is not a new test or a new exam. Somebody can't newly obtain those national certifications, but if they have them, they can maintain them. If they've been able to have them and maintain them, we can go ahead and license them in California. But newly graduated CNSs are part of these 3 population focus. Now, we did have a few schools in California that identified a need where people wanted to be women health prepared, clinical nurse specialist. That needed to be put forth in a program as a subspecialty. So they would go through their program as adult geri. And then once that adult geri CNS program was completed, then they would do a subspecialty into women's health. And then that would allow them come out and practice in those areas. With magnet status being highly sought after at many hospitals, one of those requirements is to have a CNS on each one of their specialty units and utilize them to kind of keep that care standards growing and evaluated and keep them under evidence-based. And so we'll see a lot of that. But if you guys are able to see, we vary in California greatly from other states. And so CNS independent practice, here's a map that you can see. Blue is independent. The coral color is not independent. And then you've got the no advanced practice authority or the no data not recognized as an APRN. And so they are recognized as an APRN, but they do not have advanced practice authority here in our state. And so that may change with legislation changes. It may change. It can't really change much with regulation because our regulations have to be based on what we can support with statute. But I think as we move through this process and more information comes out, these advisory groups grow and get the information out that might make some changes here. I do hear from our CNSs that they desperately want to have a more independent practice here in the state and that they desperately want the same kind of prescribing or furnishing abilities that our nurse practitioners and nurse midwives have. So more to come on that. I do want to share that this is a map for independent practice CNS, but I also want to share the map that NCSBN has as well that talks about independent prescribing for CNS. And so you can see on this map here, the blue is independent, not independent, and then no prescribing authority, as well as no data recognized. And we are under the no prescribing authority. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Lori, on that update. Melby, sorry. I have a question regarding the subspecialty for the adult geri, if they do a subspecialty. Does that require a separate certification or is that just training and education?
For adult geri, that is a national certification. So you would graduate and do that, get that national certification, and then you can be licensed in other states. We in only other one state allow for licensure without a national certification.
Okay.
So if they graduate from one of our programs that have been approved here, they can obtain licensure in California without a national certification. But because it's population focused, it would still be adult geri that they'd be licensed as. Now, if they chose to do the subspecialty of women's health that attaches to that, there is no national certification or anything at that point. I know that there's a lot of work that their national organization is doing to try to expand those and get like a family CNS, to get a women's health CNS, to get the psych mental health CNS back. But those have to come from the national certifying bodies. Exams need to be built, exams need to be administered, et cetera, for that to occur. You're welcome. Yes.
As a member of the public, can you give us a short paragraph description of what a CNS actually can do and how that would differ from a RN and an NP? Because that was a lot of jargon and that's a website. So just a paragraph for those of us who aren't nurses on what a clinical nurse specialist actually does.
So clinical nurse specialists, you'll typically find them in hospital settings. They will be assigned to a specialty area or a unit. So what you might find is a neonatal clinical nurse specialist. So they will work within the neonatal intensive care unit, and they will provide ongoing education to the nursing staff that is employed within that unit. They will update policies and procedures. They'll look all kinds of just evidence-based so that they can make sure that that practice stays current and relevant. They may also jump into patient care at times and work on discharge instructions with families that may be taking home a neonatal intensive care graduate that might have some special needs. And so they will work with providing them some education, maybe setting them up with some resources, and just really kind of work that way. I think more commonly, we see a diabetic specialist. That's kind of a very common, they'll work more independently. At that point, they might work outside of a hospital or as part of a diabetic program within a hospital and not be specifically tied to a unit. But they may also work with like pregnant women that have gestational diabetes. And so they have not experienced this, but you want them to have the best outcome. And so they might work with a perinatologist that would bring them in to consult, and they would provide some really hand-holding education, walking them through that, because not only are they now managing their body that has this diabetes as part of their pregnancy, but also a growing body inside that they want to ensure that has the best possible outcome for that. And so they do help them with diabetic monitoring, working on their diets in relation to that monitoring that they're doing, as well as providing them options for different care. They may recommend a change in medication, but because they do not have prescribing authority in our state, that recommendation would go back to their overseeing physician, who would then have to do the prescribing at that point.
Super helpful. And I heard the word education or educate about 10 times in there, and that seems to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary?
Yeah, in the materials, it says that the Nurse Practice Act information on clinical nurse specialists is Article 9. And whoever gave us the new 2024 Nurse Practice Act, thank you. But Article 9 is public health nurse. I'm not seeing the clinical nurse specialist.
Did we transpose the numbers? We as in probably me. So the clinical nurse specialist is Article 9 under our Business Professions Code. Under Chapter 6, it's showing that on our website. I'm not sure if maybe that was different. Article 9 that you're looking at, Mary, is in the California Code of Regulations. So you would need to go to the Business and Professions Code, the statute. There are no regulations at all for clinical nurse specialists right now.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? All right, BRN moderator, can you please take us to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I want to give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
Board moderator, there is no public comment in Sacramento. And while you're waiting to work with anybody that wants to public comment virtually, can you please elevate Dr. Marianne McCarthy for the next section of our agenda, please?
Thank you. Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no public requests for comments there in your location in Sacramento. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 8.0. This is the report of the Education Licensing Committee. Jovita Dominguez is the chair.
Good afternoon, thank you. I believe that Dr. Marianne McCarthy will lead us.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Mary Ann McCarthy. I am the liaison for the Education and Licensing Committee, and we will start with agenda item 8.1, which is discussion and possible action regarding ELC recommendations on agenda items. So agenda items 8.1.1 through 8.3 were all heard and discussed in the Education Licensing Committee meeting held on January 25th, 2024. These are consent agenda items unless any board member or public member wishes to pull one of them out for further discussion. And then following that, 8.4 and 8.5 are information only. How would you like to proceed?
On 8.1.1 through 8.3, it does show the motion on and what the vote was by each of the individual members. You do have an ability to make a motion to accept all of these, if that is what you guys choose to do at this point.
Okay, at this time, I would like to make a possible motion to accept recommendations of the Education and Licensing Committee for agenda items 8.1.1 through 8.3. Do I have a second?
David, I second.
Against.
Okay, we got Jovita second. Any questions or comments from the board members before we go
Was
to
it
public comment?
Jovita or David? I'm sorry.
I think it was both at the same time.
Yeah, Jovita, David, and Trish all jumped to the gun to try
All
to
right,
get
Lori,
it.
pick one. Who are we going to put?
I think the board president chose Jovita, so
Okay.
we're gonna have to, she's the leader. We'll have to
Thank you
defer to
so
her.
much. Thank you so much.
All right. If no questions or comments are needed by the board members, can we go out to public comment, please?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Oh, Committee Chair Dominguez, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no
And
public
there are
requests
no-
for comments in the area, in the
Yes.
Sacramento office. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion. We'll take it to a vote. Dolores Trujillo votes yes. Vice President Mary Fagan.
Mary Fagan, yes.
Board Member Jovita Dominguez.
Jovita Dominguez, yes.
Board Member Patricia Nguyen.
Tricia Wynn, yes.
Board Member David Lawler.
David, yes.
Board Member Vicky Granowitz.
Granowitz, yes.
Board Member Allison Cormack.
Cormac, yes.
And Board Member Neelu Patel.
Patel, yes.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 8.4 is information. This is regarding the NCLEX updates that we provide at the regular board meetings, and the information is in your packet. If you have any questions.
Yeah, so 8.4 is just the NCLEX update. It is a report that we get from NCSBN and Pearson VUE. All the statistics are there. We're still doing well, averaging with California at a 90.38 pass rate for first-time test takers, which is better than the US and other territories at 88.56. We're just gonna gloat
Just
just a
going to
bit.
say that right there.
That's
That's right.
Any questions or comments from board members? No? This is information only. Can we please open it up for public comment?
We'll be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in the request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as the time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired and will move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no public requests for comments there in your location in Sacramento. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 8.3.
8.5.
8.5, I'm sorry.
No problem. Information only, and this is the licensing update. This information can be found, it's on a separate link. So you're going to see the stuff for education licensing, and then you're going to see 8.5, which is the licensing update below that.
So mostly we covered that through speaking through our strategic plan update and talking about the implementation of the retired license, the utilization of Horn staff. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to go in depth further, but most of this information was covered previously in this board meeting.
Thank you, Lori. Any questions or comments from board members? Board member Allison Cormack.
Thank you, Chair Trujillo. Just because it's always fun to look at the numbers, looks like not only great progress in California and US, but looks like you've cut international in half. So, yay, good job. Because I know that's been difficult. Anything on here that you're concerned about, or is it all just moving in the right direction?
There's always going to be concerns. That's my job. But it is
anything we should be concerned about.
No, I mean, we're just continuing to do some process updates. We do believe that as we continue to look into different areas, that we will continue to peel back just different layers of the onion, find them, discover them, work with them, correct them, move on. We are still primarily focused with U.S. licensing, with having HCI here and the Horn staff working closely with DCA on that. And so that I think we'll continue to see improvements. And then APRN has been a focus with the chief of licensing, the deputy chief of licensing, and myself. And I believe that we're just going to continue to have improvements as we work through there. We are looking at some regulatory updates that might come out of that. And so that should streamline the process even more. With international, there has been some changes, and that came with our sunset bill, where we changed from the 75% in direct patient care to the 500 minimum hours. And so with that being the updated education standard, they have been able to look at some of the different countries and the education offerings there, and they meet our requirements easier. And so that has allowed for more people to be licensed, and that kind of timeline to speed up a bit. But we have not done a deep dive into the international aspect yet. And so I just hope that we continue to identify new opportunities and continue to make improvements.
Great.
Mary.
I always have to remind myself, because we hear it takes so long for people to get their license, but these are packets that are complete, right? So there's a lot of people who've submitted packets that are incomplete. They're not included in these statistics, correct?
They are, but what you'll see on the table, it filters out. Where is that at? It filters out the time that we are sitting and waiting for documents. So we have receipt of application, and then we start a timeline after that first review, and then it removes the time period where no documents were received. And then it adds, once documents are received, a timeline, and it combines them together. So it's not super clear yet. We're working on that. We hope to have a couple different processing times posted, and we actually hope to update our website for that. Right now on our website, when you look at processing times, it says from receipt to initial review. Most of the time, we are able to license on initial review if we have all of the application is complete. Sometimes we're pending some fingerprints, or they have to do an enforcement review. But what happens a lot of times, we're missing a transcript or something to that effect, because we really did try to streamline our application efforts. And so with the California grad, all they have to do is complete and pay the application. They have to turn nothing in because everything is done through that portal by the directors of nursing. With the out-of-state applicant coming in for their RN, all they have to do is fill out the application, pay their fee. We verify them in nurses, which we have access to. They request it. But the only thing that they have to turn into us is their transcripts. And so we've really tried to limit that. Some of the things that we're looking at for future may be that we only ask for their nursing transcript. Right now, the way that California law is set up is we ask for the general education as well. So that is your micro with lab, anatomy with lab, English, soc, psych. And so all those are educational requirements. Right now, the way that we process is we ask for the primary source document from each one of the academic institutions they went to obtain those. Where if we can get nursing academia to add those as transfer credits for their programs on their transcript, we'd only need to see the transcript from the nursing program. So we're working with NCSBN, we're working with other boards of nursing. There are various levels of academic approval at each board of nursing. And so we're trying to see if that's even a feasible option going forward. But I would love to take it from having, 5 or 6 transcripts that have to be turned in primary source data down to 1. That would be fantastic. Other things when we're looking at advanced practice licensing. Advanced practice licensing right now, if they come through method 1, that is you graduate from a California approved program. And so they go into the portal just like our pre-licensures, and they'll say they completed a nurse practitioner program, they completed the furnishing requirements, and then 24 hours they can get their license. And so that is something that we've definitely done to speed that up. We run into issues again when it's an out-of-state applicant that wants to come in. Nurses is not a system that provides APRN license verification for all states yet. So we have no real way to access a single system to say, oh, you have an APRN license in this state. So that takes some time, and not all states recognize every APRN specialty. So they might just license them as an APRN and not license them as a nurse practitioner. They may license them as an APRN who then practices as a midwife, but they're not licensed as a midwife. And so working again with NCSBN to see what will happen as that moves forward. They are really looking at the APRN licensure compact. They have to have 7 states come on board with that. In order for that to be completely effective, nurses will have to be updated and other states will have to add data into that. California is adding our APRN data into nurses. We've set a test data file over, and we're waiting to kind of finalize that process, but all of our APRN license will be inputted into nurses for verification going forward once that's complete. If you are out of state APRN, you have to come in and get licensed as an RN. Of course, that one barrier we removed was the laboratory component of the micro and the A&P, thank goodness. But they also have to then come in with their advanced practice certification. So if we can have nurses to verify that, that will be helpful. We do require for out-of-state applicants to have a national certification. I did meet with national certifying bodies to see if they were willing to join NCSBN by providing that data to nurses for a one-stop shop validation. We did hear from NCSBN that the nurse midwife information has been added, and I believe the nurse anesthetist information has been added. And so what hasn't been added to date is the nurse practitioners and the clinical nurse specialist. When I did meet with the nurse practitioner, national certifying organizations, they said they did not foresee that they would be joining that. And so I asked them if there was an ability for California to sign directly into their system and try to validate. Because right now, each one of our applicants have to go to the national certifying body that they chose and request a verification to be emailed to us. Then it goes to an email box. We have to download it. We have to name it. We have to upload it. We have to attach it to a Breeze, and then we have to move forward. And that is incredibly time consuming, each one of those steps. And so we're hoping to be able to just log in and get access. So those groups decided that they would come together and see if they can give California a solution. I haven't heard back yet on that, but I'm hopeful.
Just in terms of looking at processing times, though, would it be possible to look at, this is from the complete application to approved?
Yes.
But from time application was submitted until approved? So we can also track that, because I think that's what our public is experiencing.
That is our next step. Yes, and DCA supports that. We just have to update and get that information out.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Okay, any other questions or comments from board members? No? Okay, BRN moderator, can you please open it up for public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
Board moderator, can you see if Shannon Johnson is in attendees and see if she can be elevated for the next section of our board meeting?
Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no public requests for comments there in the Sacramento location. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. Okay, we're on item 9.0, report of the Enforcement Intervention Committee. Board member Patricia Nguyen chairs this committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Shannon Johnson has been elevated and she'll be presenting on these items. Thanks, and thanks, Shannon.
Thank you. I was going to say good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So I will be presenting the next agenda item, which is 9.1. That is the Enforcement Intervention and Investigations Update. So at the August 2022 board meeting, we voted to join the National Council of State Boards of Nursing pilot study to test the Substance Use Disorder Monitoring Program guidelines. This is a 5-year study of the Alternative to Discipline programs. And we're going to be providing data biannually for the next 5 years, well, up to 2027, to see if the nurses can return safely to practice. The Office of Organizational Improvement, which I've spoke about quite a bit lately, because over the last year and a half or so, they've been in our offices and they continue to work with our enforcement division and the investigations division. They're assessing and mapping out all of our workflows, the timeframes for task, and all of our procedures to streamline and improve the internal processes. So they're working with our subject matter experts internally for each of the units at each staffing level. And we'll continue to report on the progress of this project in future meetings as well. We continue to recruit, of course, for our expert practice consultants. And we've just recently updated our materials, all of our outreach pieces for our social media. And we are still in critical need of some of the EPCs in the areas listed on the agenda item summary. And also within that agenda item summary, we've included the links if you would like to apply and are interested in becoming one of our expert practice consultants. There is an application online, and there's a submit button at the bottom. So it goes directly to us once you fill it out. There is certain criteria that needs to be met in order to become a practice consultant, which is listed on our website as well. For complaint intake. So the analysts are continuing to request all the case investigations. If you remember a while ago, we started doing triaging with our complaint intake unit to help alleviate some of the pre-investigation work that's being done by both Division of Investigations and our BRN investigations unit. So we're continuing to do that triaging. The triaging of cases are conducted on an as-needed basis, and we are in collaboration with both DFI and our BRN investigations on all of those, and do meet as needed to discuss. We're always continuing to review our processes and procedures in order to address our complaints efficiently and make sure that we acknowledge all complaints within our 10 days. For our investigations unit, the investigation division continues to improve our processes and procedures. And on October 30th, 2023, DCA portfolio management team approved the BRN Breeze time tracking functionality request for impact assessment. This Breeze functionality is going to improve efficiency and eliminate the need for our current system that we're using, which has been used for years, but we'll be moving to this other option. As of December 1st, 2023, the investigations division is fully staffed. We continue to utilize retired annuitants and limited term special investigators to keep caseloads below the 30 cases per investigator. And the supervising or special investigators, have an average of about 21 active cases each currently. Our discipline unit, as of February 9th, we only have about 11% of our cases that are at the AG's office over 1 year. The Office of Administrative Hearings is also beginning to hold in-person hearings. However, if all parties do agree, the hearings can still be held remotely via one of the online platforms. Our probation unit, we're continuing to review the processes there as well. Make sure that we're working as efficiently as possible. We are told our out-of-state probationers are contacted biannually, and that's to verify out-of-state residency and to ensure compliance with their conditions of probation. As you know, once they go told, we are no longer authorized to hold them accountable for the majority of the conditions of their probation term. Active in-state probationers, we review those on a quarterly basis, and we also review them as needed when information is received regarding the probationer or subsequent complaints we receive as well. And then each of our probation monitors currently have about an average of 44 cases each. Intervention. So the executive officer, Loretta Melby, she has delegated authority of the intervention program manager to Jaspreet Pabla, who is our deputy chief or one of our deputy chiefs in enforcement. This is pursuant to Business and Professions Code 2770.1C. That became effective Monday, January 22nd, 2024. Management has been attending all intervention evaluation committee meetings and providing education to the Intervention Evaluation Committee members and participants. Additionally, identifying possible gaps in the regulation for the intervention program. We have conducted training for all of the IEC members on December 5th and 6th, 2023. We provided updated IEC guides and will continue to make updates as needed. And we are also working closely with our vendor Maximus to discuss and develop best practices, identify areas of improvement, and ensure adherence to all laws and regulations. The board continues to recruit our IEC members with knowledge and experience in substance use disorder, treatment, recovery, and mental health. Currently, there are only 3 vacancies, which is up for a possible appointment in the agenda item summary on 9.5 today. So if we do have appointments on those 3, we will not have any vacancies of our IEC members. We also have included in this agenda item is our stats for the fiscal year from as of 2020, 2024. And so all of our stats are listed, as well as some graphs showing complaints received based on the table A above, those graphs, decisions adopted fiscal year to date, as well as our investigation cases that are pending. We also have included in table B a breakout of our performance measure, which is reported to Department of Consumer Affairs and on a monthly basis. And so this lists our last report that we have, which is September through February. And that is all I have for agenda item 9.1, unless there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Shannon.
Any comments or questions from board members? Board Member Allison Cormack.
Thank you, Chair Trujillo. This is Board Member Cormack. This is more of a comment perhaps for the chairperson. You know, we receive these reports, but it's hard to know if things are getting better or worse or what we should be concerned about. So I wonder if maybe something that the committee can work on with the chair of enforcement is sort of identifying, like, I'm just going to say 3 things we could track over time and see directionally how we're going on various metrics. Otherwise, this is my 3rd meeting, I tend to ask what seem like, I'm sure, random questions about numbers. And so I'll just offer that as a suggestion for when we meet next, as a way to help us evaluate this and explain also the work that, we as board members do. I'm sure I'm not the only one who, tries to, gently explain that there's this whole category of decisions and appeals. So that's just a thought about how to make this more informational for us and how we can better explain to the public this portion of the work that the board does.
Thanks very much, Allison. I think that's a fair request. And Shannon, I mean, I've been following these numbers long enough that I do see we are trending in the right direction. We're filling vacancies, we're getting wait times down, but maybe you and I could talk about how to present, as Allison suggested, maybe 3 bullet points that says, this quarter we did, these 3 things.
Right. And we do follow, I have several reports that we follow every milestone of a case. And we have run those reports over several fiscal years. And so I could also supply, and we used to, and I could do it again, but we could put together a fiscal year comparison report, which I normally do at the beginning of each fiscal year for the previous fiscal year. But we could put together, and I could do it on several different items. But if there's a certain specific items that you would like to see the fiscal year comparison in specific, rather than just a very broad overview of a section. If you want to just, we could talk about that, and I can definitely provide those numbers and a comparison over, 3 or 4 fiscal years if you'd like.
Board Member Mary Fagan.
Yes, Board Member Fagan. Under the intervention section, Shannon, in the third and fourth paragraph, the trainings that have been provided for all the IEC members and the guides, and then also working closely with Maximus. Are those, is that training and the using the guides, is some changes coming out of that are what we were hearing about in public comment?
No, there's not really changes. What we're trying to do is make sure that everyone is following all of our statute and regulations that are put in place. We have, if you recall, not too long ago, we had several IEC members that we recruited for. So we have a fairly new intervention committee members. And we're trying to orient and educate them as we go. This is actually the second training that we've done for them. We did one the previous year in 2022. We've now done one in 2023. So we're looking at all of those areas. The guide that we created for them, it was created before, but we updated it to ensure that they had links to all of the laws that are in place. So they're readily available to them. We're also going to be doing training next week with the nurse support group facilitators, again, to educate, make sure that all of the statute and regulations are being followed and that we're taking those into consideration when reviewing every case.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? All right, BRN moderator, can you please take us to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in the request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public. Type in, "I would like to make a comment." Matthew A. would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you again for your time. I spoke earlier in the public comment about the intervention program and want to speak a little bit more about it, especially given Ms. Johnson's comments here. One thing that she said here, and she said over and over at these EC meetings, I've appeared at every EC meeting since December, and she said the same thing, that these are not new requirements that they're imposing on nurses. That is absolutely false. They are new requirements. There hasn't been a requirement for nurses to, number one, work, and number two, work with narcotics in the last 15 years. Now, interestingly, I'm assuming the argument she's going to make is to say, well, actually, she said it already. She said, we're just making sure everyone's following regulations. Well, again, probation has to follow the same uniform standards that diversion participants do as well, but they are not required to work with narcotics and work. And so this argument that they're just following regulations or that the rules have always been in place is a lie. There's no other way to say it. Something that was asked earlier, right after my public comment, was, I believe it was Ms. Wynn asked, well, who made these new rules? And I apologize, I don't remember who responded, but the response said these changes were made by the evaluation committee. That's also not true. The evaluation committee, they just go by what the BRN tells them. As Ms. Johnson mentioned, the management attends every EC meeting and quote unquote provides direction. There's 3 BRN members in every meeting, and there's only 3 EC members. So there's equally as many BRN members in these EC meetings as there are EC members. The BRN themselves remove participants from EC meetings if they did not meet these new requirements. So EC committees do not even get a chance to see participants in order to make their individualized treatment plan. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be an individualized treatment plan. So one EC cannot dictate the requirements of all participants without actually seeing them and reviewing their file. This has also been an issue here. The evaluation committee is supposed to be independent, but they're not. the BRN has been telling them what requirements they want, such as work requirements or minimum narcotic access, and then the EC members decide whether the participant has met that requirement or not. I suggest the BRN legal speak with the evaluation committees and ask them where the new rule came from and whether they're aware of it. As I mentioned, I've been in every EC meeting since December, and the EC members have no idea about these new requirements because it's not from them, it's from the BRN. Again, I suggest that the BRN legal specifically speak with the EC members, because all this information will end up coming out in discovery if something is filed anyway. Thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you. And then Shannon, real quick before we move on from there. Matthew, just to let you know that we do still have further agenda items on this topic, 9.3 and 9.4. Those will be discussed after lunch. We do plan on going to lunch here as soon as this agenda item's over. So if you're able to stay on and participate in public comment, you will have more opportunity at that point to have a discussion with our board. One of the things that I did want to clarify and direct our board back to is Business Professions Code 2770.8. And it says a committee created under this article operates under the direction of the intervention program manager. As we said in the report out, that was designated by me to Jaspreet. And so the committee is not independent. It does operate under the direction of the intervention program manager. It does say the program manager has a primary responsibility to review and evaluate recommendations of the committee. Each committee shall have the following duties and responsibilities, and it lists A through F that kind of delineates that out. One of the other things that Shannon brought up in this meeting is that we updated orientation. As part of that orientation process, Board Legal Counsel does give some information and feedback. He goes through Public Records Act, he goes through Bagley-Keene, he goes through just basic rules and regulations and is there for question and answer. So he is been brought into this process additionally. And obviously when we get to these agenda items, if he has additional items to share, he can. But I definitely, Matthew, would ask that you, if you have the ability to stay forward to discuss these issues that are specifically under 9.3 and potentially 9.4, where this is still just kind of an information only general update for the entire enforcement division and investigation division that includes intervention, but 9.3 will go into an intervention more in depth.
Caleb would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Go ahead, Caleb.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'll wait till 9.3. Thank you.
Thank you. That's what I was going to ask. It looks like a lot of these participants are specifically here for 9.3. So unless you have a comment that is not intervention related, I would ask you to make it now. But if it is intervention program related, if you can hold to 9.3, that would be best. Thank you.
Anthony would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Anthony put in the chat that he could hold off to 9.3. And then the other one said they'd hold off as well.
Anthony, Susan, Charlotte would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Sorry.
And board moderator, while you are working with Charlotte to do public comment, there are no public comments here in Sacramento.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Charlotte.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm unable to stay, and I'm glad it sounds like you're going to bring this up later.
I am also a participant. I agree wholeheartedly with Matthew's comments, and also would like to bring up, which I'm sure will be discussed later, especially with regard to the training sessions that are going to be happening with the nurse support group leaders. They are absolutely in the dark and completely ignorant of these new, which is very frustrating for them. I know my group support leader has no idea what's going on, can offer no guidance, and she is incredibly frustrated by it. Also, too, just to make the point that when entering this program, to decide whether to go through the diversion program through Maximus or go through probation, we are given an overview of what each, what the requirements are for each. And now that those requirements are changing after a contract has been signed, there is a complete and utter lack of informed consent that's happening with the participants. Also, I know you don't refer to it as a contract, but we're signing that we're agreeing by these rules and regulations. I am working, but currently have no access to narcotics. I'm told that I will not be added to patient care and narcotic access at the same time. So I have to first work with patients in a capacity where I have no access to narcotics. And then once I've fulfilled that requirement, I'm going to have to possibly end this job and then get another job where I do have access to narcotics to display that I'm safe to handle narcotics for 6 months with these new requirements. That's just completely not feasible for that to come into place. Also, too, you're stating that you're wanting to make sure that these nurses are practicing safely. Under the other guidelines, those nurses that have been released from the program, are we then to understand that they were not safe to leave the program? That also doesn't make sense. And after researching the numbers, the relapse incidence of people that have completed this program is so incredibly low, especially when compared to other non-nursing civilian type users who their relapse rates. So I'm not sure where this concern over lack of safety to practice is coming from at all. So again, joining the program with one set of regulations and then having them changed also represents a breach of contract. So I have a feeling that a class action lawsuit is forthwith soon. That's all I have to say at this time.
Thank you for your comment. Chris Else would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Chris Else again, nurse support group facilitator from the Central Coast. I had a question or just a comment for Shannon. She was talking about the expert practice consultant. They were hiring some, and I see that in some of the guidelines and the hiring that they're not hiring anyone who has had any been in probation or diversion before. I don't believe this is in unison with any state guideline. And I believe that the governor has actually said something obviously to the contrary. So hopefully that maybe can be reevaluated because I think nurses that have gone through the program can evaluate other nurses that may be diverting and can either find nurses that are diverting or help nurses that are diverting. I don't think that would be a hindrance to someone wanting to be an expert practice consultant. Also, Mary Fagan had asked Shannon Johnson a question about changes to the program. And I think Shannon was very disingenuous saying that there were no changes because obviously you can hear from the other comments. I agree with Matthew. I won't maybe say that she's lying about it. I think she's just being very disingenuous with her statement on that matter. So I'm going to actually bring that up right now before we get into 9.3 because she did make that statement at this time. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for your comment. David would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
I want to reiterate that if this is a specific comment about the intervention program, that that does need to hold off until 9.3 if at all possible. So if you guys are able to do that, I would like to redirect this to the agenda item 9.3.
I can hold my comment until 9.3. This is David.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So at this time, this is information only. There is no board vote that is needed. Do we have any questions from board members? Thank you.
And Board President Trujillo, there are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. There are no requests for comments there in the location in Sacramento. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. At this time, the board will break for lunch, and we will resume the meeting at 2:00 p.m. Thank you.